Better late than never, I guess. We are finally on the air. Thank you, everybody, for being really super patient. Although I saw a bunch of you were playing HQ trivia anyway, so it didn't really matter. Welcome to what will be WDWNT Back to the Future Live, the Disney Monorail, and that's, as you see up in the image, that means all of them. So we're going from Disneyland to Disney World, even though it looks funny, that Tokyo one. We're going to talk about that too. Very quickly, before we do all of that, before we get into the segment, I want to mention a couple things real quick. First of all, I want to mention we are very quickly recording a series of segments over this next 4 or 5 days for Animal Kingdom's 20th anniversary, because I'm not going to be here most of next month. So we're pre-recording it. It is the 20 biggest moments in the history of Animal Kingdom. And voting is open now. We're going to close voting at midnight tonight. So go to WDWNT.com. The post is there. Go ahead and vote. You just have to rank all of them, put them in order that pleases you, and hit submit. And that way, starting tomorrow, we can go ahead and record those so you guys have shows all of next month. So isn't that great? I don't know if we even have do we have the registration link? Can I mention that or no?
Yeah, events.wdwnt.com.
All right. The other thing that's happening is we finally have registration open for Hollywood Studios Appreciation Day. You guys listening live are the very first to know this. Hollywood Studios Appreciation Day is May 5th, 2018. It is an all-day event we're doing at Hollywood Studios, which includes group rides and all kinds of fun stuff, and as well a crazy cool game that we're coming up with, which will be a couple hours long. It is, and it'll be a couple hours long, and the prizes will be really great. Because of all that, there is a for WIGS members, there's a $5 registration fee. For everybody else, it's a $7 registration fee. Yeah, 7. And that just basically covers lanyards, credentials, and all the prizes and stuff will be given out during the game. So, again, if you're going to be at Walt Disney World or can be on May 5th, 2018, make sure you join us. It should be a fun day. We are kind of working on something special for that day. Whether or not it pans out remains to be seen, but there'll be a few surprises and fun no matter what. So there you go. Events.wdwnt.com. Registration is open right now. Events.wdwnt.com. So with that being said, we're not going to waste any more time because we're already super late. Jason, let's say we get this thing rolling, shall we?
Time travel commencing in T-minus 10 seconds and counting.
It's once again time to go back in time as we head back to the future on the WDW News Today podcast. Let's set our time coordinates for this week's trip through Disney Parks history with Professor Tom Corliss.
I'll be back in time.
It's time to go back.
Gotta get back in time.
Where, Tom? Where?
That was an amazing delay. Apparently, Scott's a little further back in time than the rest of us. But nonetheless, it's time to go back to the future, Scott. Jason, you can kill that audio a little bit. Nick isn't here, surprising. We're trying our best with the audio. That's what took so long to figure out tonight. So yeah, it's time to go back to the future once again as we look back at past attractions, current favorites, and maybe transportation systems with opening doors. Joining me for the segment, Allison Shee.
Hi, everyone.
David Smith.
Hey there.
Jason Diffendahl.
Hey, howdy, hey.
Rich Grafton.
Hello.
And a very delayed Scott Smith.
One more time.
All right, forget it.
What's going on? He's like, just forget it. We'll do it. Don't even bother with the background music. We'll have Griffin added in post. I'm not worried about it. It's fine. As long as we had the introduction. That was the hard part. So yeah.
Where, Tom? Where?
Thanks, Scott. We did that already. I don't know. You think you missed it? So we
Yeah, I
are
did it
gonna
back
be-
then.
We're going to be talking about the Disney Monorail. Oh, there's that background music. It's very loud.
I can't control the volume. I don't know why.
Good, let's just not play it then. That's the monorail song.
Riding on the monorail, riding on the monorail, riding on the monorail.
Walt Disney and his wife, we're going all the way back to the 50s. Walt Disney and his wife Lillian took a vacation to Germany. Man, I wish I was them right now. And during their vacation, they came upon a small town called Wuppertal.
Wuppertal.
Excuse me? Bless you.
Yes.
How is it pronounced?
Wuppertal.
I'm literally going to stop whenever there's a German
Yep.
word, and you could just say
I got it.
that. And this is where Walt first saw a monorail. This monorail,
It's called the Wuppertal Schwebebahn.
that's completely different than we ever said it on this show, was built in the early 20th century and was a suspended type monorail, as in the cars were hung from a track high above the ground. Walt, being a railroad enthusiast, of course, had to take a ride on this train. And although Walt liked the ride, Lillian did not like how the train swayed back and forth on the turns, and she actually became ill. Yeah, she also hated Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. Oh, yeah, let's look at all the files on Jason's computer.
Wait,
Let's
did
do
you
that.
not switch the video?
I didn't switch anything. I thought you were switching things.
You're supposed to switch.
There, now I'm
there.
on the camera.
Supposed to
Yeah.
switch it
I'll
to
do,
you.
I'll do everything.
Please do.
Now I'm on the camera.
So professional on this show. So yeah, Lillian didn't like how the train swayed back and forth. She didn't like Seven Dwarfs Mine Train either. And though he did not give up on the monorail, even though Lillian hated it. That's right. Even if your significant other hates something, just keep doing it. It'll work out fine. Later during the same trip, Walt came across another monorail system, though this one was very different than the one they encountered earlier. Rather than being suspended, this monorail was riding on top of a single steel reinforced concrete beam. And as the story goes, Walt was so stunned and impressed by what he saw, he followed the track to an administrative building to try and get some more information about the monorail. When you go to Disneyland, do not follow the track to an administration building. It's probably going to end poorly. The train he saw was built by wealthy businessman and engineer Dr. Axel. You want to take this?
Leonard Wehner Gren.
Thank you. Let's call him Dr. Alweg for everybody who doesn't speak German. How about
Which, by
that?
the way, in German would be Allweg. And this is interesting. It's a pun with his name and also means always or all paths, which makes sense for his transportation company.
Oh, that's clever. So you learned something
This is very interesting, Fraulein.
Man. There go all the German listeners. Joking. They went to bed hours ago. Walt saw was a test track built by Allweg that was constructed the year before. The test train featured high banked curves, a completely level track, and trains that straddled a beamway, thus being a straddle beam monorail, and a smaller train that would have been impractical for Walt's vision. Well, there's the suspended one. Look at that.
That's the whoopa.
Whatever.
Gangnam monorail.
Whatever the first one was.
There it is.
Oh, and there's the
Look at
train. Yeah, there's the train that had to be taller than it.
Yes.
The train over it. Where were we? So straddle beam monorail is the one we're talking about now. So after Walt saw this one, he then saw the Alweg one, which is what we're accustomed to. And again, a small train that wouldn't really fit what Walt wanted to do with it. So he spoke with Dr. Alweg and arranged to have WED employees Roger Brogy and Admiral Joe Fowler come to Germany and inspect the train and see if it could be adapted for use at Disneyland. So immediately Walt was interested in getting one of these. He saw it and he wanted it. Same with Disneyland. He built it because he wanted it. He wanted one. After Brogy and Fowler returned with good news, WED immediately started designing the Disneyland monorail. The engineers reported that the Alweg design would be suitable not only for Disneyland, but for urban installations as well. And this was important since Walt wanted Disneyland's monorail to serve as a practical example for municipalities to use as the basis of their own mass transit solution. So in a lot of ways, this is kind of the beginning of Walt getting into city planning. Like, yeah, there's a little bit of it in the development of Disneyland, but this is really when Walt starts looking at Disneyland as a way to maybe improve the world. And obviously this evolves over time into the people mover and eventually into his idea of building the city of the future. So all of that begins when Walt finds the monorail. In 1958, Wed joined Alweg. No one had anything to say. I'm moving on. Wed joined the Alweg company to develop a practical monorail system for Disneyland based on that original design. The Disneyland track layout had been purposefully designed to include features which would commonly be required in metropolitan areas. Curvatures with a 120-foot radius, overpasses, and grades of up to 7%.
7?
Yeah, 7. These features would reinforce the practicality of the system. Do you ever wonder why Disneyland has this really long portion that doesn't really seem to serve a purpose? There was a purpose to that originally, obviously also because the monorail didn't go anywhere originally, but really it was Walt wanted to show all the different track implementations that a city would need if they were going to install this. So they were really looking to show off everything that the monorail can do. It wasn't just about bringing a ride to Disneyland.
So he wanted to show tight curves and the ability to go over and under itself.
Yeah.
And also, stations and things like that at different heights, different working heights of the monorail and things like that. So I have here, let me share this. This is Bob Gurr concept art from about 1958.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen this concept art before, you've probably been living under a rock.
So,
because this is in Bay Lake Tower, this is in Top of the World. This is on the mug I'm holding in my hand right now. Not that anyone can see it, but it's.
Wait, show us the mug.
Here's the mug. It's a Tomorrowland mug, and there's the original.
Look at that.
It expands all the way out to a blue one as well, but that's the original art. But we can go back to the clean art, or if you want to show people the actual monorail we're going to be talking about. There you go. Look how small that is. It's like a SeaWorld monorail. I'm joking. That would have like one seat. Anyway.
Jeez.
The entire cost of the system was going to be $1 million.
I can't hear that without thinking of Dr. Evil.
$1 million. Yeah. The Disneyland monorail system, Disneyland Alweg monorail system, was dedicated on June 4th, 1959, with a ribbon-cutting ceremony that included U.S. Vice President Richard Nixon and his family. This was part of a major expansion of Tomorrowland, which, of course, included what you saw right underneath. Jason, you can put that image back up. What you saw right underneath the monorail was the entrance of the submarine voyage. No Finding Nemo back then, folks. The Matterhorn bobsleds, and as well the motorboat cruise. All part of that 1959 expansion, which we've talked about a million times, but the 1959 expansion is when Disneyland becomes Disneyland. Disneyland obviously was a terribly interesting thing when it opened in 1955, but when they really started to do things besides just look and design, that completely changed and were different from anything that was at any amusement pier or anything at the time, was 59. No one had a submarine fleet. No one had monorails. No one had any of these things. This is when Disneyland became, the premier kind of this form of entertainment.
I think it's also important to note that at this point, this monorail doesn't go anywhere. It's kind of like the people mover. Mm-hmm. It was an e-ticket attraction when it opened in 1959. Well,
the novelty was that you're riding on this monorail. They didn't need the gimmick of, it'll also get you somewhere. It wasn't necessary in 1959. Yeah.
Are you going to point out that there was an 18-minute delay when Vice President Nixon tried to cut the ribbon?
You can talk about the story. I don't know if we have this story in here. We probably don't. Where they thought Walt Disney had kidnapped the president.
Something
Vice
like
president,
that.
Sorry.
Vice
at
president.
the time. Yeah, so basically they took a ride and the Secret Service members did not get on. I don't remember the whole story, but the Secret Service members got left at the station. And so Nixon had been kidnapped for 18 minutes.
Yeah, Bob Burr likes to tell that story, and he always says that when he was in the monorail with Richard Nixon, Nixon was just shaking his head, talking about how inept the Secret Service were.
Now, unimpressed that he was riding on a monorail, and he was just talking about how dumb the Secret Service was. Right?
Sounds in character. For misanthrope.
Speaking of Bob Gurr, he of course led the design of the monorail. Described the German I can never say this word. Utilitarian monorails as a loaf of bread, quote unquote. Put his own twist on the design of the Disneyland monorails. Gurr turned the German design into something that looked like it was straight out of Buck Rogers. It was shaped like a streamlined bullet-shaped rocket and had a red bubble dome to house the pilot. There you see the dome with the pilot.
And that's the pilot sitting on a normal size seat, so you got to realize everyone else is jammed down inside there.
Yeah, this is real small. Like current day annual pass holder probably wouldn't fit in this monorail. It's interesting because they obviously
Back to the Future started to see real late when I wasn't paying attention.
It's about to have the same listenership. So the interesting thing is, this is really similar to the submarine voyage in where the cast member was located. In the submarine voyage, the cast member stood in the middle and above everybody else, looking out those portholes you see down there below the monorail, and then on the monorail you have the pilots sitting up there way above. So they're obviously designed at the same time by the same people. Some things are going to mirror each other there. Disneyland's original Mark 1 fleet consisted of 2 3-car trains, red and blue. The Bob Gurr designed Buck Rogers trains ran along a track 0.8 of a mile long. And in 1961, a third train, gold, with 4 cars was added to the fleet, even though it's more yellow. The original 2 trains were lengthened to 4 cars, and that's when these became the Mark II. So the Mark II isn't even really a different monorail. It's the addition of a third monorail train and basically adding 1 car onto the 2 existing. That made them Mark II. This expansion, of course, was necessitated by the extension of the system to the Disneyland Hotel. This in 61 is when it became an actual transportation system, and the track length nearly tripled, measuring now 12,300 feet upon completion. And what a brilliant idea to service the hotel, and obviously this affects the creation of Walt Disney World immensely. But whoever was like, "Hey, we should send this to the Disneyland Hotel," changed a lot of things. Here you see a color photo.
And because what it did is it basically extended the park out to the hotel. Therefore, the guest experience would extend out. But it also kind of demonstrated in a proof of concept the idea of having a multi-park resort, even though at that point there weren't multi-parks, but the idea of being able to move guests from one point to another point without having to have them leave the Disney experience. So this really kind of proved that concept, and then they could build off of that.
Well, that's when Walt thought of Epcot. I mean, so much of that was, hey, people go to Magic Kingdom and then they take a people mover, they take monorail and then to people mover to, the tourist center of Epcot. And then obviously Disney eventually decided that'll be a park, and that's where we get the multi-park and running transportation between parks from later on. But there it is, running over the parking lot.
Yeah, so that's the Mark II running over the parking lot.
Look at those beautiful power lines.
Well, and you can see, there's the Disneyland entrance sign.
Yeah.
You see the back of it there, too, which is kind of neat.
Yeah, as you can see, Anaheim, always picturesque. Always beautiful. Such a beautiful city. Always has been, even back to then.
I think it's interesting that that there was a promotion of public transit and trying to get away from cars, because in the 50s it was the complete opposite. And I'll use another German word, like the zeitgeist was all about promoting highways and I think in some ways, Walt Disney's vision was sort of the anti-Robert Moses, who was trying to keep Americans in their individual cars. And Walt sees his vision as like, oh no, they're going to get on vacation and we're going to put them all together in something and they're going to enjoy it as a community. It's an interesting vision.
Yeah, it definitely changed the world, because then you fast forward a couple of years to the 64 World's Fair, and Disney at one point at least was developing a monorail for the World's Fair, and then another company ended up doing it because he was so preoccupied with the 4 projects that his heart was actually in that he didn't jump on the 5th one. So yeah, things from the time it opened in 59 to 64, Disneyland had a huge impact in changing the world's feelings about, are cars the future? Is this where we're going to end up? Are we just going to stick with cars, or are we going to go in a different direction? And yeah, a lot changed in 5 years' time from Disneyland opening the monorail to then. In 1964, Bob Gurr's years of experience with the monorails led him to begin work on a new Learjet-inspired monorail design. The new 5-car design became the Mark III trains, which replaced the Mark II fleet in 1969. So they got a little delayed, obviously, with the World's Fair stuff, and a lot of the other stuff was going on at Disneyland. It wasn't until 69 that those would come into existence. And WED Transportation Systems Incorporated, a division of WED Enterprises, manufactured a set of 4 trains at a cost of over $2 million. And the same design was used for the fleet of monorails that would debut at the opening of Walt Disney World in 1971. WED Transportation Systems Incorporated, and this whole time period, is wildly fascinating, because the Disney company, despite working on Walt Disney World and still having Disneyland, was entertaining the idea that they would get requests from cities and other businesses to build monorails and people mover systems. And so they started WED Transportation Systems Incorporated. And if you get, I don't actually have them handy, but there are brochures that they printed of the people mover and the monorail, which they sent to interested parties, that are just fascinating. So towards the end of the 60s, as they're getting into Walt Disney World and they think they're getting into building a city with Epcot, the company starts to look at different things like this. It's a very, they grow far beyond their original intentions at that point. I don't know, Jason, we're going to show, do we have a picture of the 3 to show people?
I do. I'm trying to get it to show.
This one's my favorite, but it's probably the least aerodynamic.
I don't like the 3.
It's my favorite. It's bubbly. I like bubbles.
Okay. Yeah, like even the first Walt Disney World one, I'm not crazy about. I think we kind of perfected it when we introduced the, hard to believe saying current fleet. It's still current. Yeah, and even so, the new Disneyland ones look cool. They don't really work, but they look cool. We'll talk about that later. I'm going to keep moving on. Hopefully, we'll get to show you that Mark III at some point. The plans for Walt Disney World called for a monorail transportation system as a major part of the resort's utopian urban planning design. In fact, in a 1980s vintage publication on the monorail system, Disney claimed that the economic viability of the entire Walt Disney World resort area is hinged on the performance and reliability of the Mark IV monorail system. Oh boy, if that was still true, would we be in trouble?
There you go.
Yeah, so that's the 3?
That's the 3.
Yeah. Which is kind of what the current Disneyland fleet is based.
Yeah, the current fleet harkens back to this design mostly.
Yeah, our first fleet was not quite as similar as this makes it sound, but underneath it kind of was. So 2 concentric loops surrounding the Seven Seas Lagoon were constructed. The outer express loop shuttling passengers between the Transportation and Ticket Center and the Magic Kingdom, while the inner loop would act as the local line connecting the Magic Kingdom and the TTC with the Contemporary, the Polynesian, and much, much later on, the Grand Floridian Resort and Spa, originally the Grand Floridian Beach Resort. And a fleet of 10 Mark IV trains were built by Martin Marietta in 1971 and 72 at a cost of about $6 million. That's 6 times the cost of originally building the monorail at Disneyland. I still think that sounds like a deal. 10 trains and all of that, well, that's just the trains, but still, I think considering what it cost them at Disneyland in 59, they did all right. The cars were...
I'm sorry, and also considering the per passenger cost, I still think that's a fairly economical route at the time.
Absolutely. The cars were shipped individually and during installation were permanently coupled with articulated joints. And each of the 5-car, 171-foot-long, 92,000-pound white monorail trains had a unique colored stripe used as an identification. This is, of course, the birth of this. Before this at Disneyland, the whole train was pretty much colored.
Yeah.
So this was, and it's amazing because even though it existed, for what, 12 years before this, this became what people, when you say monorail, not even Disney monorail, this is what people think of. This look is, you ask most people in the world, this is what's going to come to mind, even if you don't use the word Disney in it. And there they all are. Where are we? Monorails orange delivered on April 5th, green delivered on May 20th, and gold delivered on June 15th, were the first trains to enter service on September 1st, 1971. Monorail blue was the 4th train and entered service on September 20th. These 4 trains were the only ones that had been delivered prior to the opening of Walt Disney World. So the resort operated with 4 trains from opening day until Monorail red came into service on November 7th. There you go. There's a better look at the nose cone.
I believe that's red.
I think it is red. How timely is that? I love the full Walt Disney World logo on there. That's really slick. I like that a lot. And it's also on the front. Can we go back to that for a second? Yep. It's also on the front of the cone.
Right under Goofy's hand, yeah.
That didn't last terribly long to my knowledge. That's wacky.
Yep. Yeah. And there's gold getting lowered onto the beam. So they came shipped obviously on trailers, 1 car at a time, and then a big crane lowered them onto the beam, one at a time, and then they sort of pushed them together and connected them permanently once they were on the beam.
And then put the sleeves around the connection points.
Then those articulated sleeves got put around the connection points too. Yes. Right.
Yeah, for those of you wondering what the sleeves are, they're the parts on your toy monorail that fall off when you
The Mark IVs were also notable for being enclosed. All the previous ones had open windows or windows that could open. Yeah. Obviously, with the plan to put these in Florida, you had to keep them entirely enclosed for the most part.
Now we're looking at track.
Yeah, here I want to get. You like that one?
We just went way too much forward.
These aren't in the right order.
Well, go back to the construction picture for a moment.
Well, okay, that's the construction of the Magic Kingdom station.
Look at that!
Oh wow!
That's so you can see the Seven Seas Lagoon and the boat docks there. Yeah. That's the construction of the Magic Kingdom station. There's the doors with the handles of the Mark IV.
We used to have to use handles.
Yeah. There's the inside of the Mark IVs.
Yeah, that seems like a lifetime ago. I have vague memories.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's
actually for me, it literally is a lifetime ago.
Pretty much. There's a picture of the Mark IV inside the Contemporary,
right above the Concourse Steakhouse. Concourse.
Yes.
Look at that carpet. It's great. Oh, I love this. This is the map that appeared in guest rooms in 1971. I've had the blessing of seeing a couple of these in person. They're really wonderful. But you'll see a lot of things on that map that didn't come into being, that didn't happen. There's a whole lot of those on there. So, and even extensions of the monorail.
Yeah, you'll see the extension of the monorail to the Persian resort.
Which the Persian is really far north. Yep. Like almost at the backstage facilities there, which is odd.
Yeah, I'd seen this before, but I had never noticed the monorail track going all the way to the Persian. And
it's basically coming off the maintenance line, basically.
That's the maintenance line as it sort of is right now. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think they initially planned that there would be stations also at the Venetian that was never built, as well as the Persian. And then within Tomorrowland, when it looped back from the Persian, and then going to the main gate.
Yeah, I don't know when that Tomorrowland station was a thing. I don't think that idea existed for very long. It's not on the map. They didn't know, and I think we talked about this in one of the Back to the Futures on something in Tomorrowland. They didn't know what they wanted to do with Tomorrowland for the longest time. Like, that was the land, like,
they still don't know.
Built out the park.
Jason, you took my line.
They built out the park and they got to Tomorrowland and they're like, I don't know.
In other news, I think I've gotten rid of the lag.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Scott. I'm glad you.
In other news, my phone is better than my laptop. But anyway, you were saying some monorail statistics that were fascinating.
That. We were talking about the trains. I'm going to get back to the trains. Monorail Yellow was the last of the trains to arrive in 71. That was put on the tracks on December 3rd. Another 7 months would pass until Monorail Pink arrived on July 3rd, 1972. Monorail Silver on August 16th. Monorail Purple on November 14th. And Monorail Black on December 22nd, rounding out the 10 trains of the fleet. So there you go. On February 12th, what was that?
There's all 10 trains of the fleet.
Yeah, we showed that already.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, now that they're all there, we can show it.
Sure. Yeah, we completely rely on when I get to it in the script.
That's the theory.
On February 12th, 1974, Monorail Blue, as it was entering the Magic Kingdom station, lost air pressure in its brakes and rear-ended Monorail Red as it was leaving the station filled with passengers. The pilot of Monorail Blue and 2 guests were slightly injured. This was the first incident on the Walt Disney World monorail fairly early in its existence, but just some minor injuries.
So, does anyone know actually if the guests were in the front?
I don't know.
Yeah, being as this was 74, it wasn't documented super well.
Things were looser back then.
Yeah, so the fact that we even know that guests were injured is amazing.
I think we know that because it was in the newspaper. So
yeah, in the news.
What we know is basically out of the Orlando Sentinel.
Yeah, the Sentinel piece doesn't say where they were seated. So the Sentinel still holding up to that same great quality.
There's another see you real late right in there.
Jeez.
Scott's just doing like a commentary track on this as it's happening.
Basically.
For interesting design choice that when you have a failure of the actuating mechanism of your brakes, it leaves them off instead of putting them on. Most air brakes in trucks, for example, when they fail, they gradually come on, or in trains, they come on. But in the monorail, apparently you need air pressure to apply the brakes instead of air pressure to release the brakes. That was an interesting design choice.
It was, because that concept of failing to the on position had been around for years and years in the rail industry. So
back to steam trains, practically.
Yeah, I'm not sure why they decided to go the other direction.
Was it a money thing, maybe, or
because money?
I know that's a serious question. Like, did they skimp a little bit to get it built, or I don't know. Like,
good question.
Would it save money? I'm asking the people who know what
I can't imagine that.
are.
I can't imagine that it would cost more money.
No, having the cam go one way versus the other way, I wouldn't think would be a huge price differential.
I'm just a guess. I have no idea.
Yeah,
I don't even know what an actuator is. So
it's obviously something that actuates.
The only thing I could think of is that knowing that there's a possibility that these would get locked in position outside of a station and the necessity to tow them in order to evacuate them, they may have decided to not chance them locking the brakes mid-beam.
So, if they can't tow it because it gets stuck. Right. Yeah, I can see that.
That's a good point.
Yeah, someone in the chat said the system where air is required to apply the brakes is definitely cheaper maintenance-wise to maintain compared to the other brake systems.
That's a good point.
That makes sense to me.
Yep. Because if you don't do proper maintenance on like a train, for example, then you freeze the train because the active position is brake on, brake off. So the inactive position is brake on.
Brake on, brake off, the breaker.
Wait, why?
Oh my gosh.
You did a clapper joke instead of the Karate Kid?
It's the 80s. It's going to be the 80s soon. It's going to be relevant.
The Karate Kid is a much more obvious joke.
Well, that's too far away from this timeline, though.
Okay.
Trying to.
Question is, did the doors stay closed though?
I am more in story than Toy Story Land right now. So let's.
Oh boy.
Anyway, we'll continue. 2 additional Mark IV monorails, the 6-car, 201-foot-long coral and lime trains, were added to the fleet in 1977. To help distinguish them from the pink and green, their colored stripes had deltas. Those are those spaces in the color stripe, those white spaces. That's the delta. Monorail coral stripe had the white deltas. Actually, lime, I forgot, had the blue deltas.
The blue deltas, and
which
that's
is the ugliest monorail I've ever seen.
And remember when the monorail pilot
costumes
matched lime with the blue delta?
You don't have a picture of those, do you?
I've
sold those costumes. They're incredible. They're the ugliest cast costumes of all time, and I love them.
I love them.
They're like jumpsuits with green undershirts. They're fantastic. Lime green.
I don't have a picture of that.
Okay.
It'd be nice to get one.
Yeah, it exists online if you try to look it up. I remember when I was doing research to find them. And they also had the like construction-y helmet. The pilot helmet was like a real hard hat. It was navy blue. It was crazy. Yeah, so those Delta. Yeah, that lime with the blue. Oh, so ugly. Eventually, all of the Mark IV trains except Gold were converted to 6 cars. Each car had 4 air-actuated doors per side, giving the trains a through-loading capability when disembarking, where disembarking guests exited on one side while embarking guests entered simultaneously from the opposite. This increased efficiency by decreasing station dwell times and at the theme park and at the TTC stations. The central car had double doors to accommodate wheelchairs, and the doors were open from a control panel outside the cab door and had to be closed manually. The interior configuration consisted of 4 seating compartments per car, each having a set of 2 facing 5-person benches across the width of the monorail. We showed this before in the interior. Jason, can we put up that interior shot again?
Yeah, let me get it here.
And that would allow each car to seat 40 passengers, bringing the total capacity of the 6-car trains to 244 passengers, including 4 in the nose cone and 1 or 2 pilots.
There you go.
There, we're going to show that again. There's that interior for you. There you go. And then maybe we show the doors again. You have the door handles for everybody. We'll show people those doors again.
Yep.
There you go. It's a different time.
Sure was. Oh, I got a picture of the deltas, not the lime green deltas, but the coral deltas. Where's that? Where'd that one go? There you go.
The rest of the train's missing, but disregard.
Well, you know,
it's just like the middle.
This is them hooking it up.
Yeah, that's a great picture. Yeah, that's pretty much how the monorail functions today.
Consistently with a cherry picker.
And a tow tractor, yes, absolutely.
And without the front or back.
That's after the piece fell off in the Epcot parking lot.
It was a whole train. Guy caught the whole front. Oh, hey, Wes, look at this.
Do you want to show, this is pretty neat too. We could take a look at, what do we got here?
Yeah, and we're not going to talk about, like, obviously going through the contemporary is amazing and all that, but someday we will do a Back to the Future on the contemporary, and we'll talk all about that design.
That's the control panel on the original Mark IVs.
Yeah, not a David Hasselhoff car.
Is that the radio?
That speaker is, I think it's both a radio and announcing over the intercom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It looks like a tuning radio, like when they just put their music on. The old tuner radio. And the front and back switch.
Just a lever.
Yeah, I'm kidding, of course. It's obviously more complicated than that.
I don't think it is.
Not a whole lot.
Never mind.
It's really not. There's not a whole lot of buttons there.
I didn't want to insult any monorail drivers.
There was the. I mean,
There's not. You got the handle. The handle is just the control stick is just like a boat where you have like 3 forward gears and 3 reverse gears.
I mean, that was the brilliance of the monorail. I mean, it was kind of brilliant in its simplicity.
You didn't have to steer.
People think it's far more complicated than it actually is, I think.
Where's the possums? Simpsons joke.
Wow. On June 26, 1985, a flat guide tire caught fire in the rear car of Mark IV Monorail Silver on the Epcot beam en route to the TTC. Passengers broke out the window in a door, then used the exterior emergency release handle to open the door, then used it as a step to climb onto the roof and away from the fire. Is that actually a picture of the fire? That's amazing.
Actually a picture of the fire.
That's
I've never
amazing.
seen this until today.
That's
I
fantastic.
can't imagine the top of the monorail would be much safer.
That's
Wow,
actually
look
a
at
picture
that.
of the fire.
I could be wrong, I guess.
There's a couple different shots.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't even know these pictures existed.
Look at that.
See, that's
a
a
monorail on fire.
It's amazing because I always assumed that they went up through the roof opening.
There was no roof opening.
It didn't exist. That's
the
why
Mark
it came
IVs
later.
did not have a roof opening until they were retrofitted with a roof opening after this fire.
After this, yeah, I
Oh,
always
they
assumed
added
they
that,
always
I
had it,
know.
but that I didn't realize they actually had to climb onto the door on the side to go up.
Yep.
That is insane.
I'm curious how much of this led to the end of this fleet, because this is kind of near the end of the lifespan.
Yeah, it is. It's a couple of years from the lifespan. Well, I think, at this point, their design life was 20 years.
Yeah.
Right. So they came online in 71. They would have expected to replace them in 91, and that's basically what they did.
Yeah.
This
That being
fire-
said, they didn't give them a whole lot of problems. They weren't
No, there weren't at all.
plagued with issues. Yeah.
No, not really. It was just, hey, their design life is up. Let's
Yeah.
replace it.
It's the time in the company where even if something was fine, you'd be like, well, it's still time to replace it. Let's spend the money.
Meanwhile, Walt Disney World is using the same ones.
Meanwhile, who wants to go to the fair at Hollywood Studios?
There's a picture of the burned monorail.
Oh crap!
Wow.
Yeah, it's
The
bad.
morning after.
You
Basically.
could see that in the fire. Like the whole top of that thing is
gone.
engulfed.
Yep.
Yeah.
That went up quickly.
Yeah, the whole top of that car is engulfed in flame. I cannot understand how people got out of there.
Because it was 1985 and people knew how to live without someone telling them.
Yeah, but
Hey,
also, like, they
what?
were fortunate that everyone was able-bodied enough to climb out of the window and get.
Oh
off
yeah,
stage.
absolutely. Like if it was the
Right.
wheelchair car, I mean, God forbid. But I think back then, I don't know. I feel like people could figure things out for themselves. I don't know.
No, you sound like
And
a
you know what? I
90-year-old
can't.
man.
People can't get able-bodied people can't even get on and off the monorail now. You want them to climb out in a case of a fire?
People were also a lot more fit then.
That's also true.
That's what-
Absolutely. I think there's several factors in that. If that happened today, it would be far more disastrous.
If it happened today, it probably wouldn't have gone up so quickly.
Well,
Like,
that's
this
true
start-
too.
This started from just like a little, the friction tire, like a tire into the entire monorail. Like half of that is gone. Like,
Yeah.
like it's ash. That's weird. That is quick. That went up quickly. So I
Well,
would
we don't
think,
know how many hours. I mean, that obviously is taken after it was put out. Do we, Jason? We don't know how long it burned for, do we?
Hang on.
Well, they have their
Let's see.
on-site fire department or on-property fire. So I
Yeah, Reedy
assume-
Creek.
Well,
Reedy
if
Creek
you look at
responded.
this,
yeah.
I think it said the fire burned for about 15 minutes.
Yeah,
That's pretty
went up.
fast.
That went up
Yikes.
quickly.
Wow.
What is it, like asbestos in the seats, or what? Like,
Oh,
wow.
it said firefighters extinguished the flame in 15 minutes.
That's oh man.
So that was 50 minutes from the time they arrived.
Yeah. It's pretty-
15 or 50?
15.
Jeez.
That
So could-
went up quickly.
It's amazing they got the people off the roof in time.
Well,
yeah,
they
so it says
so
Reedy
they
Creek
walked-
rescued everyone and evacuated the rest of the train that quickly. Yeah.
What they did was the people got up onto the roof and then they walked towards the back of the well, actually, yeah, the front of the train. This
I
happened in
assume,
the
but
back.
still, the flames are like. I'm sure it was like hot.
Oh yeah, but you've got this was only
These
I mean,
people
this was
were
only
clearly getting out when there was just smoke.
right. I think so too.
These people were
Because
already
the
like,
smoke
we're
was
getting
in their
out of
car.
here.
The smoke was in their car, so they were getting out in order to breathe, not knowing there was a fire coming. They got onto the roof and then they walked
sure they
towards
could
the
have put it
front of the
together.
train. They walked
Yeah.
towards the front of the train, which you had 6 cars away, so they could get away from the fire well enough. And I think that's how they all survived.
Yeah, it does state that they noticed the smoke. They called the driver. Driver actually told them to get on the roof. Interestingly,
Mm.
And
Well, I'm sure they have a
Wow.
procedure. Like, I'm sure there's something in that giant manual that's in case of fire, do this.
Well,
climb to the roof.
yeah, get out of the monorail.
If it's on fire, get out of it.
Yep.
Oh, we're going way
gosh.
too far ahead.
Yeah, wait a
We're
minute.
Way
This is-
too
we're
far
skipping
ahead.
far ahead.
I'm going back to me now.
Yes.
Yeah, so 7 passengers were hospitalized for smoke inhalation or other minor injuries, but that was it. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And within 15 minutes, it's
Yeah, that went up
unbelievable.
like a match. Jeez Louise.
Yeah.
Here's
Hold on.
there's a
One,
pretty good picture of it.
1 minute.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Wow.
Like that is gone.
Look at the door. The door is like melted.
Yeah.
That went up quickly.
Oh,
It did.
man, it's gone.
I wonder if you can still see the stains on the beam if you know where this happened. I'd
think
be
you
really
can.
curious because this is on the Epcot beam. I'd be really super curious.
And we all know the
walk
monorail
along
hasn't been
there.
touched in a
I would
couple
think they've
decades.
weathered off by now.
You think
Yeah.
so?
I think the concrete will hold up a little better than the monorail.
Oh, I'm sure.
Mother Nature cleaned it before Disney did.
Yeah. After their retirement from service at Walt Disney World, 2 monorails, Coral and Lime, were sold for a reported $3.5 million. How about that? They got a lot of their money back. Each to MGM Grand Bally's Monorail LLC in Las Vegas for use on the monorail system linking the 2 casinos, which opened on June 14th, 1995. These 2 monorails were retired for the second time on Sunday, January 26, 2003, after more than 7 years of operation in Las Vegas. Yes,
So there's a picture of the Bally's monorail.
it was the first wrap.
Sort of, yeah.
Mm.
Looks boring, which I guess was.
Look at that. I'm amazed that Disney sold them, but a different line of thinking back then.
Well, yeah.
They weren't thinking about putting the monorail on merchandise back then.
Well, they wanted to prove that it was like a feasible thing for a city to do. So that was the best case scenario, was they put them into operation in a real commuter type situation.
Yeah.
Here, this is a photo of them taking Monorail Red off of the track.
After the fire?
No, this is just
Red wasn't.
to remove it. No, this
Yeah.
is just removing.
When they were
Mark
retired.
Yeah. And then what they actually did was they put them in the monorail graveyard.
Yeah.
You,
And I have a history with that red monorail. I sold that red monorail.
So there's
Okay.
there's the monorail graveyard. And then I do have a picture of the red one. Why don't you tell your story of selling it?
Well, when I worked at Theme Park Connection, when that was a thing, we had the front car of Monorail Red, the Mark IV, and it sold for, I believe it was $100,000. And the guy bought it, and he put it on a flatbed, and he like drove it all over the country, even back to Disney World at one point. Then he tried to resell it. I don't think he was ever successful. I don't know why you buy something like that. I'm like, forget it. Well, there it is. Back when it was it was sold twice. I mean, obviously Disney sold it at auction at some point, but then when they were Mouse surplus, they sold it then, and then it came back years later when I was there at Theme Park Connection. Still pretty much in the same shape, surprisingly. Didn't get a lot of wear wherever it was. So they still held up really well, even compared to the current fleet, I guess you could say. So yeah. $100,000 have driven all over the place. I don't know where it is now. Who knows what the guy did with it?
I think it's in his backyard. No, I think it's in his backyard.
It's still sitting on. I don't think he's ever taken it off of
the trailer.
Yeah, the trailer.
No.
I bet he Airbnbs it out.
What I would have done, although the historian in me would have punched me in the face, is I would have done something with the interior, made it like a patio or something. I mean, if you're spending $100,000, I assume you have the money to do such things.
Yeah.
But then the historian in me would be like, you're defacing history.
Yeah.
Okay, what would the historian in you want to do? Put it back on a beam?
No, just leave it in its original state as a display piece somewhere. Would be great, but
donate it to the Walt Disney Museum.
Yeah, I'm sure they want
honestly,
it.
actually, yeah. Probably.
They don't even want his plane. They're fighting over the plane.
Yeah.
No one wants it. It's like everybody thinks it's too big. So
I'll take it.
Yeah, right. Where are you going to put it?
My backyard.
I'm sure your backyard fits an airplane.
It's not that big of an airplane.
It's much bigger once you put it in your backyard. You'll be surprised.
Yeah, sure it is.
That's the amazing thing with Disney props. None of you realize how big they are until they're physically, like even like the lamps at Mad Tea Party. You look up at them and you're like, oh, that'd be cool in my house. You don't realize how big that thing is until you have it in your arms.
Well, yeah, I have
much bigger than you think.
Yeah, a fun story related to that. Back when the Polynesian lobby was getting refurbished a couple of years ago, they had these really cool pictures on the walls.
Yeah.
And somebody got me one of them, and
They're
I
huge.
tried to bring it home.
Yeah.
I have a minivan. At that point I had a minivan, a Honda Odyssey,
like a
minivan.
Disney minivan. Oh, okay.
Honda Odyssey minivan, bigger than the Disney minivans.
Yeah.
And I thought I could put it like in the back with the seats down or whatever. That thing was about 5.5 feet long.
Mm-hmm.
I had to strap it to the ceiling of the van to get it home from Florida back to Pennsylvania. So I had to basically tie ropes through the doors to hold the thing up on the ceiling because there was no other way it would fit in the van.
I really hope you don't get a ticket.
And that, yes. Or that the strings don't break.
There you go. A fun Jason anecdote as always.
You love them.
Love Wawa.
I'm actually, my desk I'm on right now is a old Polynesian desk. So. Lives on in everybody's homes, apparently.
Yeah.
So Monorail Red was decommissioned on January 23rd, 1993, and over its 20 years of service had logged 943,976 miles. 9 years later, Disney put that up for auction, as we said already, on Disney Auctions on eBay. The auction closed on June 6th. The winning bid was Chip Young of Georgia with a bid of $20,000 plus shipping expenses. And that was the end of those. All right. Let's talk. I don't even know where I am in this script. Oh, we got more. There we
Huzzah! Running like clockwork as always.
As always, of course. Sure.
Another interesting thing that I have a picture of here. So there was a lot of consternation at Disney after the 1985 fire because the Orlando Sentinel published that picture. And so at that point,
it could have been worse.
Disney was extremely upset that they published the picture of that monorail burn like that because they were really worried it was going to scare the heck out of people.
Well,
and they did, so starting from that point onward, anytime there was an accident, they went to crazy lengths to not let anybody get a picture of it or to see what had happened. And so here you can see the picture in. Once they towed the monorail back to the barn, they even put up like this tarp so that people that just happened, even though they were cast members that happened to be there, couldn't even like see what was going on.
Don't think about the fact you're riding on a tinderbox.
So that
I like the big red a close call.
Yeah, right. It could have been worse, but
what a horrible thing to say.
See, folks, clickbait existed even back then.
There you go. There were other accidents. I remember one not too long ago, a couple of years ago, on the resort loop that was somewhere between the TTC and the Contemporary. where a tractor crashed into the nose cone, and I think we have pictures of that too. But Disney, like, they shut down all the roads. Like, it was unbelievable. The extent
fun fact that never would have got out if it wasn't for us. Fun fact.
True.
Yeah.
And then
because they shut down the roads immediately. No one could drive in that area. No one could even see. Even we had a picture that was so far away that it was hard to tell what was going on, but you could
tell something was going on.
Yeah.
And then so here we go. Here's the picture. Then I think Wesh sent out their choppers.
Well, we don't need to get into this now. We're still in the
remind me when you get there, because I have pictures.
80s and 90s.
Go ahead.
But now we're going to talk, oh boy, it's everybody's favorite part of the show. It's time for infrastructure and specifications. Yay!
All right. Wake me up when it's over, someone.
If you wanted a time to use the restrooms, this is it. Here we go. Each train has 12 axles fitted with 18-ply, 46.6-inch diameter, 17.8-inch wide pneumatic load tires.
Which you saw in that picture of Monorail Red at Theme Park Connection.
There you go.
That big tire in the back was the load tire.
Yeah. In addition, each train has 48 21.5-inch diameter guide tires, which provide horizontal stabilization.
And that was the tire that caught on fire in Monorail Silver in '85.
Yeah. 2 steering tires under each cab to assist with steering, and 60 nylon safety wheels, which can guide the train in case of a flat tire. The tires are filled with nitrogen to help prevent fires. Good job.
Yep, now they are.
We're talking about the modern. We're getting into
this is the Mark 6s.
These are the Mark 6 now. The passenger compartments are suspended over each load tire by airbag cushions, which are automatically inflated or deflated depending on the passenger load to ensure a smooth ride. Propulsion is accomplished by 8 100-horsepower electric traction motors on each train, located on axles 3 through 10. Power is provided to the monorail through 8 carbon collector shoes from the 600 volts DC carried by the aluminum and stainless steel bus bars attached to the side of the beam below the train. Positive is on the right side of the train's forward motion. Negative is on the left. In case you ever get into monorail design, folks.
Or in case you ever happen to be on the beam and you don't know which side of the beam to fall off.
Yeah.
Or unless you're playing a WDWNT game show and they ask us a question.
This is probably a whole category on the next one. The bus bars are fed with 2,000 amps of current from several power rectifier stations along the track, and most noticeable of which, Rectifier 3, is located along World Drive, midway between Epcot Center Drive and Vista Boulevard. The rectifiers convert 13,200 volts AC to the 600 volts DC supplied to the bus bar. In the monorail, the usable 600 volts is converted to a stable 370 volts and then further converted to 230 volts for the air compressor. A low voltage power supply converts the 600 volts DC from the bus bar to the 37.5 volts to power the doors, horns, floor lights, outside lights, computers, radios, onboard communication systems, and the cab console as well. The maximum speed permitted for the monorails is in typical operation is 40 miles per hour. The train control system, the TCS, which is also an abbreviation of my name, often called the vehicle, often called the vehicle onboard controller, the VOBC, is responsible for speed control. The propulsion electronic control unit, or the PECU, and the brake electronic control unit, or the BECU, are components of the TCS. Monorails incorporate 2 separate braking systems. Dynamic braking, which slow the train, uses the motors as generators to generate electricity, which slows the motors, thus slowing down the train. The generated electricity is dissipated in the resistor banks between the cars, which can reach 800 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yes, so that's why those little plastic flappy things fall off of your models, is because it's 800 degrees in there.
Not your model, though.
No, in real life it is.
Yeah. Air action. Let's not forget the great tree fire I had in 1985. The whole Christmas tree went up because of the monorail. Air-actuated 18-inch mechanical disc brakes located on axles 3 through 10 are used to bring the monorail to a full stop. The monorail with no passengers can make an emergency stop from a speed of 40 miles per hour in approximately 300 feet. Monorail storage and maintenance takes place at a building located behind the Magic Kingdom known as the Monorail Shop, often called the Roundhouse or the Monorail Barn. It's located on the second floor of the same building that houses the Walt Disney World Railroad steam trains. So if you go back there, you'll see the train tracks and the beam all heading towards this one building. It's kind of cool.
The picture that we're looking at now is kind of a map.
We're not looking at
system.
anything right now.
Well, put it up then.
I have to. I'm also holding a script. You're killing me here. There you go. There's a map.
So that's the map. You can see the maintenance spur, and then here's the switch to the back to the Persian, and then onto the monorail shop. So that's what this is, and then I'm going to show you the monorail barn as soon as we get to that slide.
In a minute.
Of course, in a minute.
I'll keep talking about it while you're
Go ahead.
There. One is used. The shop has 11 slots. One is used for the 3 work tractors, which are diesel-powered vehicles used to tow broken down trains and inspect and repair the track.
That's over here. That's the work tractor right there you're looking at.
There you go. Where are we now? That's for that. The other 10 slots are available for monorails to be parked after closing. One of the slots has an enclosure, which is used when the trains are painted, and one has a removable section of track. Scott, what are you clicking?
Whoops.
He's playing with Transformers, obviously.
Of course he is.
Shut it.
One of the slots has an enclosure, which is used. I don't know where I am in this anymore. The other 10 slots are for the monorails to be parked after closing. One of the slots has an enclosure, which is used when the trains are painted, and one has a removable section of track, which can be wheeled out of the way when maintenance is performed on a load tire. Since only 10 trains can be accommodated here, the other 2 must be parked in stations along the route. In the event of a hurricane, 4 trains can be parked on the track inside the Contemporary Resort, and the hurricane doors closed. Once on May 9, 2001, Monorail Yellow and Monorail Red were parked nose to nose about 8 inches apart on the Epcot beam of the TTC due to construction on the switch beam. So that can happen.
So hang on, I got a couple pictures here to show.
We've seen that, the dead monorails.
Dead Monorail Society. There's 2 parked nose to nose in the Contemporary.
Oh, they're kissing.
And then there's oops, that's not.
Oh, the balloon windows.
There's the balloon windows.
We're just going all over the place.
We're jumping through time.
Let's see.
It's like a season of Lost.
Of course. Here they are parked nose to nose in the TTC.
Of course.
Aw. You said like a season of Lost. Remember the television series?
No, I know,
Lost?
but then Jason's like, of course. And I'm like, what?
I don't know.
What do you mean,
Of course it's like a season of Lost.
Filling air. Look at that. There you go.
Look at that. Making
Don't
it.
do
Good
this
job.
anymore, fun fact.
I can't imagine why.
We'll
The
get to that.
14.7 miles of track at Walt Disney World includes, you can pull up that map again,
Oh, yeah.
includes the 7.6 mile Epcot line, the concentric beams around the Seven Seas Lagoon, which measure 2.8 miles each, and additional spur lines to connect to the monorail shop. The Mark IV monorails averaged 67. We have to put it up. The Mark IV monorails averaged 67,500 miles each year in 18 hours a day of operation, with a system-wide capacity of 10,000 seated passengers per hour.
18 hours a day. Remember that, kids?
Yeah. In their first 10 years of operation, the Mark IV trains logged over 5 million miles and carried 250 million passengers with a 99.962% operational readiness record at a total operating cost of less than 8 cents per passenger mile. There is no transportation system in the history of mankind that has had a 99.962 operational readiness record. That
sure
only belongs to the Disney World monorail system.
Yep.
Imagine that. Now, I don't even want to know what the number is now.
70.
So,
if they're lucky.
7. Yes.
Yeah, 7.
7.
I'm sure it's still significantly better than the New York subway system. So
I don't
I'm
know
not going to
about that.
complain.
I don't know about that.
It's getting close.
The last
It-
couple of years, for sure, because New York has gotten much worse.
Yeah, since I left, it's gotten terrible.
That's the
Yeah,
problem.
that's it.
Yeah.
Yep, it's all your fault.
Yeah, always is. The monorail beamway is constructed of 26-inch wide sections of pre-stressed concrete and steel around a polystyrene core.
Styrofoam.
It's very astute, Jason.
Not actually styrofoam.
No, it is actually
It's
styrofoam.
actually
Oh, it is
styrofoam.
actually styrofoam.
It is
Yeah.
actually polystyrene is styrofoam.
Yeah. The sections of track 4 feet tall at midspan and most between 90 and 110 feet long were cast in Oregon, however you want to pronounce it, and transported by truck to Florida, where they were installed onto the tapered precast concrete columns. Once in place, post-tensioning provided the final alignment of the beamway to reduce any remaining discontinuities. The monorail track at its highest point is 60 feet above the ground when it enters the Contemporary. The Epcot beam, constructed in 1982, during the construction of Epcot, Florida residents could request a complimentary ticket for a round trip to the Epcot line to get a sneak preview of the park. Dated June 1st, 1982, I don't know if we have the photo, maybe we don't. On June 1st, 1982, there's a photo that commemorates the opening of the Epcot Center line. That's when it opened. You might be thinking the opening of Monorail 4 months before opening would create a beam to nowhere, but the system was immediately pressed into service. The Epcot Center Monorail preview became a wonderful opportunity for regular guests to visit the construction site. Imagine that, allowing your guests to see construction sites, as opposed to now double tarping Caribbean Beach, so I can't see it.
So you can't get a picture of it.
Just for Caribbean Beach. The visit...
Oh,
Jerks.
boy.
The visit included a slow-speed trip through Future World and the chance to depart the train at the Epcot station, and upon arrival, guests could view the 300-acre expansion from the still massive exit ramp. And here, tour guides were on hand to answer any questions, aided by large concept renderings and maps of what would quickly become the eighth wonder of the world.
How about that? Not even did they show you the construction, but they had tour guides to answer your questions.
Yeah, and I hope, unlike Walt Disney Presents, the tour guide is actually giving some correct information about the upcoming project. That'd be
Oh
great.
boy.
Well, except for promising there'll never be characters in this park.
The monorail system incorporates several switches throughout the system. Jason, we'll go back to the map. Switch beams 1 and 2 are located between the Magic Kingdom and the Contemporary. These pivoting beam switches allow monorails to travel between the spur to the monorail barn and the express loop, and between the express loop and the resort loop. 5 pivoting beam switches, switch beams 3 through 7, are located adjacent to the monorail shop and connect the 11 slots to the single beam of the spur, leading to the rest of the system. Switch beam 8 is located just north of the TTC and allows monorails to transfer between the express line and the spur. Switch beam 9 is located just northeast of the intersection of World Drive and Timberline Drive and allows monorails to transfer between the Epcot line and the spur. Switch beams 8 and 9 are new beam replacement switches in which a straight section of beam pivots to the side while a curved section moves into place. These switches allow for higher speed operations through the switch and can cycle in 12 seconds. The monorails maintain a safe spacing during normal operation via a moving block light system, or MBS. The system is often called the MAPO system, a term which comes from the movie Mary Poppins and, of course, the division of the design firm of the company. Provides the pilot with information on how far ahead the leading train is located. Spacing is measured in quote-unquote blocks, which are segments of roughly 500 to 1,000 feet. In general operation, pilots must maintain spacing of at least 2 blocks, and the system gives the pilot a green MAPO signal. If only 1 block separates the trains, the system gives the pilot an amber signal. If the leading train is in the very next block or the same block, the system gives the pilot a red MAPO signal.
And actually then stops the train.
Yeah, locks out the pilot's controls and applies emergency brakes automatically. This emergency stop is called a MAPO stop, and the pilot can be disciplined if these happen too frequently.
I was in the front car of a monorail when one of those happened.
It's real, like, forceful, isn't it? Supposedly?
It's not horrendous.
Yeah.
It depends, but it is a pretty abrupt stop. Yeah, I mean, you're not going to get thrown out of your seat, but it's a pretty abrupt stop.
Yeah.
It's made with real maple syrup.
That is the dumbest joke.
Honestly, could not think of anything else to say at this point.
Maple syrup. That's going to be a shirt now.
So Jason, did the driver just miss the amber warning?
No, actually. So the full story is that we were riding in the front car on the way back to the TTC from Epcot, and they would actually test the system, the MAPO system. They would have to test it to make sure that it worked on, I don't know, like every 4 hours or something. And so this was actually a test. And so
a test.
So it's a deliberate.
So we're approaching the TTC. There's a train in the TTC. We passed the last MAPO marker before it would stop. So we've got a yellow at this point. The driver stops the train, obviously in contact with monorail operations, because if you like Tom said, if you have a MAPO stop when you're not supposed to, that's a big problem and you'll get fired. But when the shop tells you they're testing the MAPO system, then they want you to do it. So we stop the train in view of the TTC. You can see the train in the TTC. And basically she floors it. She throws the control all the way forward and then takes her hands off of it. And the monorail speeds up and then essentially stops itself. So it was pretty cool. I mean, that would be cool anyway, but we were in the front compartment, which was amazing.
Right at the point of impact in case it failed.
This was.
I'm glad they tested with guest support.
Yeah, back then you didn't think about such things.
Hey, howdy,
Jesus.
Additionally, after the 1985 fire, the trains were also equipped with an Allison heat detection system. This will alert the pilot if any of the heat sensors located in axle compartments and PECUs register an over-temperature situation. Each monorail carries 14 fire extinguishers distributed throughout the passenger compartments and cabs as well.
Or at least they do now.
Good job, Allison.
Well, after
It's named after my legendary hotness. So.
Oh boy,
wow.
The heat detection system.
Jeez, you put some maple syrup on it.
Wow.
Anyway, let's talk about the Mark 6 trains.
There's your fire extinguishers.
Oh wow, we even got a picture of the fire extinguisher.
That's where
no stone left unturned tonight.
Nope.
There you go.
Where were they?
And there's the phone that those people couldn't find.
Yes, that's right.
I'm just going to change my Instagram video. There's no phone in here. Anyway. 12,200.
You would have done the same thing in there.
He absolutely would have.
Absolutely, but I have a reason to.
Yeah, it's news.
Because money.
That poor woman didn't make any money off of her video.
No, she sure didn't. We made money off of her video. Sucker. 203.5 foot long 6-car Mark 6 trains were manufactured by TGI. No, not the restaurant chain. The Transportation Group Incorporated.
That's TGIF. It doesn't even make sense.
So the Mark 4 trains were manufactured by Bombardier.
Yep.
And the Mark 6 trains, they didn't want to go back to Bombardier, I guess, because, I don't know, they caught on fire or something. So they went with a different company.
Something like that.
Bombardier started going out of style at that point.
Which one did Mark Marietta do?
They did
the original.
Oh, they did? Yeah, no, Mark Marietta did the Mark 4s. That's right.
Isn't TGI is part of Bombardier.
I think that's what it is. Yes.
They're a subsidiary.
Yes, there you go.
That's right.
Yeah. Bombardier wouldn't become like a non-reputable company until recent history.
Right.
That's a recent development. Yeah, I even have it here. They're subsidiary of the Montreal-based transportation giant Bombardier. I can't even pronounce where in Canada this is. La Pocatière?
Obviously, we need a Canadian.
Yeah, I don't know where you find one of those.
Canada.
La Pocatière, Canada. Thank you, Scott. They have the maple syrup.
They do.
These-
They sure do.
Everything's better with 2 scoops of maple syrup.
Please stop. No one even
Wow.
knows what that's from.
No,
That hasn't aired.
Doesn't really matter either.
These trains, it doesn't, I guess.
also true.
It's a whole breakfast. We have a whole breakfast now. These trains were manufactured of fiberglass over a steel framework, in contrast to the aluminum bodies of the Mark IV trains. The door and seating configuration of these cars is different from the Mark IV. Each car had 2 bus-style double doors per side that open and close automatically, or definitely automatically. The interior configuration comprised of 2 compartments per car, each with 2 facing 5-person benches. This allowed much more space between the sets of benches, thus each car is able to accommodate 40 standees in addition to the seated guests. This gave the Mark 6 monorails a capacity of 364 passengers plus 1 pilot, 50% increase in capacity over the Mark IV. To allow for standing inside, these trains are slightly taller as well, and 2 vertical handrails were installed in the center of the standing area with fold-down seats. Look them up, kids. Do we have pictures of those? These existed until not that long ago. 2 fold-down seats between them to allow for more seating during less crowded times of the day. In practice, these were rarely used and eventually removed to provide more room for standing. That was always like my lean spot. I love that like weird leaning console in the middle, and then they ripped that out just had poles there eventually. So where they removed 4 new vertical handrails replaced the original 2 that were in the middle. With a more durable flooring placed in. They got rid of the carpeting, and we got that beautiful gray floor, man.
Oh,
Love that.
so nice.
So nice.
Feels more subway-like.
Certainly
Absolutely.
does. I mean, it makes sense. The amount of foot traffic, you never even got to see the
Well,
carpet
and those
in later years anyway.
and with the Florida weather, I mean, those carpets were always wet and
Yeah, it made more sense. I would have preferred a slightly design that perhaps matched the rest of the train in some way.
Well, of course.
Great, but whatever. A monorail train collided. Another accident happened when a monorail train collided with a diesel maintenance work tractor near the Contemporary on August 30th, 1991. Monorail Red was closely following Work Tractor 1 as it was being filmed for a commercial just north of the Contemporary. The cause of the accident was attributed to the Work Tractor's engine failing while in motion. 2 cast members were injured.
I got a picture.
There you go.
Oh,
There's that one.
jeez.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah, broke the glass. Look at that. Yeah, I mean, being fiberglass, these were not the most terribly sturdy.
They weren't designed to be in crashes.
No.
There's the work tractor.
Yeah.
So you
That
can see the
beautiful
work
Disney
tractor's
scene.
supposed to work when the monorail is
That's
out of
probably
commission.
going to handle a crash a little better than the monorail.
Oh yeah, I think it was unscathed in that
Yeah.
crash.
Yeah, and hasn't even been repainted since that crash. So, yeah.
Oh wait, actually, look, here's another picture. Hang on.
Got another one?
We're finding these live.
There's the work tractor.
That got smashed.
Yep.
Jeez, no wonder the 2 people were injured. That's
There it
rough.
is.
Wow.
That's where it was. It was pulling out of the Contemporary.
Yikes. Oh, at least it was just an injury. Everyone was fine.
Well, there's no passengers in it, which was good.
Yeah. The Mark 6 trains came online from 1989 to 1991, about 1 every other month, and slowly replaced the aging Mark 4s. The same 12 color designations were used, but Monorail Lime's blue deltas were changed to white when the monorail was repainted in 2003.
We lost the blue deltas.
Yeah, rightfully so. It looked terrible. Looked terrible. The Mark 6 trains were designed and built to mass transit standards, incorporating slightly more powerful 113 horsepower DC motors. Many of the same systems originally used in the Mark 4 monorails were later retrofitted to the Mark 6, or later retrofitted to the Mark 4s, were incorporated into the Mark 6. These systems had served the monorails well for years, so the same basic systems with some upgrades were expected to continue to work well in the future. So keep that in mind. There is 1971 infrastructure still being used in 2018. In 2018, a lot of the same. Does it? Maybe the time has
Once
come.
in a while.
Maybe. In the case of safety and communication systems specifically, this was a necessity. For several years, both Mark IV and Mark VI monorails were used simultaneously. So the safety and communication systems had to be interoperable. They had to connect. The Mark VI design, with some modifications, was used for the new Las Vegas monorails when the original 2 Mark IV trains purchased from Disney were replaced in 2003. So they kept with Disney at that point. Or I guess Bombardier would have done it for them.
Yeah, Bombardier did it.
I don't know if Disney owned the rights to the design or how that all works.
I don't think they were that close. Aesthetic looking, they weren't that close.
Yeah.
Technologically, they were probably pretty close.
Here's one I was there for. Electrical fire occurred on August 12th, 1996, as a monorail entered the Magic Kingdom station. Only 5 passengers were on the train, all of which exited safely. 2 cast members were treated for smoke inhalation, but everyone was fine. Yeah, I remember this. We were at Magic Kingdom. This was like, I don't think I ever took the ferry before this. So it was like, because I refused. I loved the monorail. I thought the monorail was the coolest thing as a kid. Why'd you want to take a boat? Boat's boring. I want to ride in the sky train. You know?
I still feel that way.
I would too if they worked. If I didn't feel like I was going to get stuck for a long period of time, I would gladly ride the monorail. I prefer to. I don't like the boat. I mean, I'm sure there's people in the chat yelling at me. The ferry's wonderful. Blah, blah, blah.
I just see all the switchbacks in the TTC, and I take the boat.
Yeah.
My dad prefers it, so we usually take the boat, but I kind of do it reluctantly, but it makes him happy.
Yeah. Anyway, years later, believe it or not, I know this is going to be hard to believe, but Disneyland Paris didn't build a monorail system. I know Disneyland Paris and their love to spend money, because they've never cut any corners at that resort. Yeah. But needless to say, Tokyo didn't open with one either. There wasn't really a need. But eventually there was a need. The Disney Resort line is an automated monorail in Japan, which operates between the Maihama. I can never say that. I don't.
Well, you're going to be there. You better learn how
Maihama.
to say it.
I think it's Maihama. Yeah, I better learn to say it by next week.
One Japanese place to another.
Yeah. Excuse me, where's train? I need train.
Yeah, you're not going to sound too stupid.
Yeah, I'm gonna try my best.
Don't worry, the country speaks
Most of them speak it.
Yeah,
I'll be fine.
There you go.
If there was a country I can go to as a big stupid American tourist, this is the one probably.
Or Mexico.
Paris will be another story.
That will be a different story.
So it has the first station and then the Tokyo Disney Resort station. The system is operated by Mahama Resort Line Company Limited, the subsidiary of the Oriental Land Company. It all fits together, who also operates the resort. Legally speaking, the line is built as a railway, just like the ordinary rapid transits or commuter rail lines there in Tokyo. As such, season tickets are available. They have to charge by law. And Pasmo and whatever, the Suica IC cards can also be used on this line. In reality, though, the line mostly functions as the gateway attraction of the Disney Resort, and all stations are located on the private property of the Oriental Land Company. So, fun fact, when the Western River Railroad opened with the park, there's no railroad around Tokyo Disneyland. Japanese rail regulations required that any railway line with more than one stop subject to the same rules of any other conventional rail line. So as such, there's only one stop on the Western River Railroad in order to avoid having to charge fares. Obviously, it's inside the park because you want to charge people to ride the train. So yeah, that's why. So then when they did introduce the monorail, they had to charge because it's legally required. I'm sure the Oriental Land Company wasn't upset by that either. That being said, they're not typically a money-hungry organization. Their ticket prices have not really inflated. Honestly, they're about $50 a day to visit the resort, even park hopper, about $50 US.
That is crazy.
Yeah, tickets are compared to here dirt cheap, even though they're overcrowded there. It has remained, at a reasonable price. So it's not as if they really wanted to charge people; they just had to.
Well, trains are a huge thing in Japan. Like,
yeah,
that's how kids.
They're
go
part
to
of daily
school.
life.
Yeah, the kids go to school on trains. There's no buses. At least they're not.
So even more
like
so
here.
than life in New York or Chicago, I mean, these are places that still also have an accompanying bus system and other modes of transportation. It's a mostly train-based society.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. On November 19th, 2005, we're going back to Walt Disney World. Now, that's all we got to say about Tokyo. It hasn't had any issues. They're very different trains. We're going to talk about the manufacturing stuff when we talk about possible replacements for Florida's system. But obviously, you see there, that does not look like any Disney monorail that has existed before. It is a monorail, but they definitely look more like passenger trains.
They look like trains in Japan, yeah.
They are really neat, though. I mean, the Mickey windows, and they have the Mickey handles inside. Very, very cool. And if you buy enough tickets, you get a pin. It's really great. Very, very excited to get a pin riding the monorail.
Now, is the Maihama station, is that a gateway to other public transportation?
Actual transportation, yes.
Okay, so they use it as much more of a utility.
You don't really need it, apparently, but you can, yeah.
Okay.
And it also, apparently the station is easily accessible from even, believe it or not, good neighbor properties like the Sheraton and the Hilton have easy monorail access. Could you imagine a world where non-Disney resorts have easy monorail access? Could you?
Unbelievable.
On November 19, 2005, someone also said in Japan, railway companies release a formal apology if a train is more than 5 minutes late.
Yes, they do. And usually the driver gets fired.
Yeah.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Japan, you got to follow those rules.
Efficiency is number one. Well, it's not necessarily about rule. It's politeness, like politeness and expectations. You're not supposed to. Yeah, like you can't
interconnect.
Yeah, I guess, but you make it sound like such a.
Well, they're very rigid. They're very rigid in their ways. They're very stuck to the rules and regulations.
There's honor in meeting their obligations.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah,
that's all. But that's all interconnected. The following of rules and doing your job as
doing what you're supposed to
times. Do. Yeah. Honestly, if that happened once in a while, I don't think people would understand. Like sometimes there could be technical reasons or something.
But see, that's the other thing is that in Japan, technical reasons are not a good excuse.
Yeah. Whole different way of life. Back to Florida on November 19, 2005, a work tractor was preparing to tow a monorail yellow, which are broken down on the express beam near the Contemporary. The work tractor accelerated suddenly and crashed into the nose cone of monorail yellow. This keeps happening. Crushing the hook operator as he was attempting to connect the work tractor to the disabled monorail. Was that fatal?
Yeah, was it?
That here?
I don't.
It couldn't have been fatal because the 2009 was considered the first fatality. It says crushed, but I guess
maybe smushed.
He lived.
Okay, Jason.
I don't know. Whatever.
He didn't die. He couldn't have died. It wasn't the first fatal accident.
He didn't die.
Yeah. Probably good that it was fiberglass in that case. All right, we're moving on now to the Mark-7. Yes, at Disneyland. In 2004, Monorail Orange was removed from the line and taken to Walt Disney Imagineering in Glendale to be reverse engineered.
Because they didn't remember how they made it.
Yeah, God forbid they have blueprints. Monorail
Did anyone
Blue,
save the notes on how we made this?
Yeah, Bob Gurr took them with him. Monorail Blue was removed in September 2006 for rebuilding. The Finding Nemo submarine voyage show building was extended into the lagoon beneath the monorail, which closed from August 21st through late December of 2006 to prepare for the 2007 opening of that attraction. The refurbishment from the Mark-5 to the Mark-7 was done one train at a time. The first Mark-7 train, Monorail Red, arrived at Disneyland on December 20th, 2007.
Whoa.
Yep. It was originally expected to be in service by the end of February 2008, but due to design change issues, it did not begin serving guests until July 3rd, 2008. Monorail 7 Blue arrived on April 10, 2008, began daytime testing on August 1st, and began guest service on September 16th. And finally, Orange arrived on site on August 14, 2008, and began riderless testing not until March 2009, and began guest service on April 7th of that year. That is the entire fleet. There's three trains, red, blue, and orange. These were built by a Canadian company that did a pretty horrendous job. These have a lot of issues. They were made kind of cheap. So the number one issue they had was air circulation. So they had to take them offline and bust holes in the roof and put these air scoop things on top. You can kind of see them there, I think. They're these pairs of things sticking up on the roof there. They're small. These are air scoops to bring air into the train because there was no air circulation.
Well, the other there weren't air conditioners in them.
No, but they figured like the windows open would be enough. It was not.
No, that's a silly thing to think.
It wasn't working. The other thing is those panels on the side, the stripe panels, the black panels that compose the stripe, fall off the doors real easy. So it's not uncommon to see a cast member at the station taping them back on. Also, like it didn't make some of the clearances originally. It was hitting trees and stuff. It just was a big mess. Oh, good Lord.
I think they did that.
Those look
we'll
so
get there. We'll get to Manny and Mona Monorail.
Oh, my God.
There you go.
And they're really unfortunate spiels that could have been taken the wrong way. So, we didn't really talk about the Mark 5s. The Mark 5s were between the 4s and 6s in Florida. Right. And they ended up being pretty much the same as the 4 or as the 6.
The 4. They're basically just the 4 re-engineered for Disneyland's track.
Yeah, they were a little smaller because Disneyland
were definitely smaller.
Disneyland was built for those 59 trains. That's why still people that visit Florida all the time go to California, and that door opens to the monorail, and they're like, "Oh, there's only seats. I have to sit." Look at that. There's
the Mark IV.
It's a great picture. That elevator was still on the side of that building.
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, we're going to go back to Walt Disney World for an unfortunate piece of history. On July 5th, 2009, during a failed track switchover from the Epcot line onto the Magic Kingdom Express line, Monorail Pink backed into Monorail Purple. I will say viewer discretion somewhat advised at this point if you're watching the video version. There's going to be you're not going to see anything too bad. It's going to be all pictures of probably the trains.
Yeah.
But still, it may make some of you uncomfortable. So.
Although that fire may have made some of you uncomfortable, and we didn't warn you.
The fire, no one died in the fire, so it's probably a little easier to look at. I find it somewhat hard to look at that sometimes. So Monorail Pink backed into Monorail Purple at the Transportation and Ticket Center station, killing the 21-year-old pilot Austin. I'm going to butcher his last. I don't know his last name.
He's German. Allison should say it.
Wenenberg? Sounds right.
I think it's Wunenberg.
Yeah, well, actually, it is German. Wittenberg, but I'm sure he didn't pronounce it that way.
Yeah, I'm sure it had the American pronunciation. Of Monorail Purple. One employee and 6 guests who were on the trains were treated at the scene and released. OSHA and park officials inspected the monorail line, and the monorail reopened on July 6, 2009, after new sensors and operating procedures were put in place. An investigation by the National Transportation Safety Board showed no mechanical problems with the trains or track, but did find that the track used in the switchover was not in its proper place for the track transition. The NTSB also noted that Purple's pilot attempted to reverse his train when he saw that there was going to be a collision. Disney placed 3 monorail employees on paid administrative leave as a result of the incident. On October 31st, 2011, the NTSB issued its findings in the incident, citing the probable cause of as the shop panel operator's failure to properly align the switch beam before the monorail train was directed to reverse through it. This is a really unfortunate event that could have easily been prevented if people were doing their job. I think it's well documented that the manager on duty was not even on property.
The manager on duty was supposed to be in here.
Yeah, he was not. He was off property eating. And someone that would have been caught if the manager was there.
Absolutely.
So this was completely human error. The manager, I think we all agreed, is an idiot. He should have been there. And it's really unfortunate that someone had to lose their life because someone decided not to do their job. And I'm surprised it was administrative leave. It should have been fired immediately. As soon as it was found out, the person should have been let go. It's really terrible. And beyond that, from an operational standpoint, this is where the Disney monorail system loses its efficiency.
It goes down
The
hill.
efficiency ended. And this is when you started seeing long lines and downtimes and being forced to take the ferry or a bus. All of that is a byproduct of this accident and new safety regulations and things that went into place, and the automation system that still doesn't work and is never going to work that we'll talk about in a few moments.
Yep. So here, a while back, I mentioned how they really don't like people seeing the accidents, and
Well,
so
someone died in this case.
Right.
I wouldn't want anyone seeing that either.
But
I
they
don't want to
built
see that.
they built this box in the TTC.
Well, they couldn't move the trains.
Right, they couldn't move the trains. But the train. So I have some pictures of the damage that actually I haven't seen before today, and it's pretty astounding.
Yeah.
So we can
I do want to know, like, obviously WDWNT existed. This is the first image I saw. Because I think it's kind of disgusting that people rushed up the ramp, like to take photos and stuff when this happened. And in the video, you can see the emergency personnel like screaming at people to get away.
Right.
Obviously I cover Walt Disney World for a living, and we've definitely shown things you're not supposed to, but I think those are fun things. They're generally, construction,
this is
things
horrifying.
of that sort. This was kind of a disgusting situation, the way those pictures were captured, but nonetheless, we have them.
There's also a video online that I don't recommend watching.
That's where you can see
the one.
people yelling at them to go away, and there's the shot that's more famous that was seen on CNN and all of that kind of stuff.
Well, this is after they started towing it out of the TTC.
Yeah.
Right, they couldn't get them apart.
Well, that video was on, and then this is what you saw like that whole next day. Because let's remember, this was like a huge national story. This was hour after hour of CNN coverage. It's July 4th weekend, so there wasn't anything else happening in the news cycle. So this would have been a big deal regardless. But literally, the whole day was CNN just talking about this, which was kind of incredible. Kind of hit home. And, we never have these sort of things happen at Disney World. It's really unfortunate when they do happen. They're few and far between. So Monorail Teal would be built using parts of the two trains, the parts that were pretty much unaffected from Pink and Purple. And Monorail Teal entered service in November 2009, rather quickly. And then using a lot of new parts and the more damaged pieces, Monorail Peach was added to the fleet in October 2011 to bring the total back to 12 trains. Obviously, out of respect, Monorail colors Pink and Purple have been retired. Pins featuring those two colors of Monorail were pulled out of service or pulled out of circulation. They weren't sold. They were hidden Mickey pins. They were on cast lanyards. They were actually all pulled out of circulation and destroyed for obvious reasons. And then who can forget the infamous Starbucks mug? Starbucks started doing those mugs, and it happened to have a purple monorail, and that was pulled days later.
Yeah, like 3 days.
To silver. Yeah, just a couple days later.
This picture we're looking at now is actually Monorail Peach naked.
Yeah.
Going into the bay in the Monorail shop where they do the painting.
Yeah. Around the time all this was happening, cast members and some websites, I think we use the term too, were calling these Frankenrails because they were, again, built of various pieces of the two in the accident and other new pieces that were ordered and such.
Yeah, so Teal was built with basically two halves, the two undamaged halves.
Yeah.
Peach actually required brand new cabs. So the first and the last car of Peach, which have the driver cabs, had to be fabricated from scratch, brand new.
Not by Bombardier, because they did not have the parts. Disney had to figure it out.
Disney had to do it themselves.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fun fact: Bombardier doesn't have anything that they need for these monorails. Nope. And that's the monorail accident. So
there's nothing to add on this. I mean, it was an awful thing.
Yeah.
There was just
And I think we talked about this plenty on the podcast when it happened.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I don't think there's much more to say at this point.
But plug for Wigs members, because Wigs members have access to all the back episodes of the WDWNT
They do, including
podcast.
the original Back to the Future, where we spent quite a bit on the access.
Yep. So
we'll move on to brighter things. On March 19th, 2010, Disney debuted Monorail Tron, or the
Monorail, yeah.
Yeah. On the Epcot line as part of a marketing plan for Tron Legacy. Repainted Monorail Coral, it was removed from rotation in July 2011 and has returned to its normal route and colors after that. But there is the Tronorail, which even got made in merchandise years later at the D23 Expo. There's the art. That was the beginning of the idea of these promotional monorail wraps. That one was really neat. I like that.
I like this one too.
Yeah.
I thought I remembered back in like 2002 or 2001, like the monorails being covered with Stitch like decals.
Yeah, there were decals, like his butt showing up against the glass and stuff like that.
Footprints even on the inside, but I went to look for photos of them and I couldn't.
I can't find photos.
I couldn't find them when we did the Stitch Back to the Future. We were going to show them, but no one apparently took a picture, and I'd have to go through a lot of old photos to find it.
But yeah, so they did do this. Here's one for Monsters.
Well, yeah, I'm going to talk about it. Let's go.
I think the Monsters University one was pretty bad, but whatever.
I mean, it's like they're writing in it.
Yeah.
There have been several other monorail wraps since then. On March 31st, 2012, Monorail Red was changed for the Avengers. Do we have the Avenger rail? That's the blackish one.
Yep.
There's
the Avenger rail.
Like, that's really cool with the lightning.
That was neat. That one raised a whole lot of questions because you can't have Marvel in the park, so it wasn't allowed to run on the Epcot line because that went into a theme park. So it had to run on the Resort and Express lines.
That's funny.
Yeah, it was the first Disney. That was the first Disney-owned Marvel movie, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Paramount was still distributing the ones before that. The monorail, again, we already said about the Universal Studios thing. And of course, there has also been March 2013, Monorail Black became the Iron Man rail to promote Iron Man 3. I love this one. I like this one better than Avengers because it makes sense. He's flying. I also love that it had the Stark Industries logo as if it was a Stark Industries monorail.
Yeah.
I love this thing so much.
Yeah, this is pretty neat.
Yeah. Monorail Teal was also converted into a special scheme commemorating the release of Monsters University. We showed that one already. Then there was also the Zootopia monorail. Do we have the Zootopia?
I don't have a picture of that one.
We have video of the Zootopia monorail, I think, up on YouTube. That one, that's my favorite because it's like they're all commuting into Zootopia.
Right.
And it has like the little doors for the mice and everything. It's probably my favorite one of all the wraps. It was just so ingenious. But speaking of wraps, let's talk about Disneyland's wrap. I forgot about the Force Awakens monorail. I forgot that was a thing too.
Yep.
In May 2012, the monorails received new decals depicting eyes and a mouth covering below the front windows to tie in with the opening of Cars Land at Disney California Adventure. Each train was given a new name and unique narration depicting the trains as if they were in the Cars film universe. There he is. There it is.
These are the worst. The proportions look all wonky. The problem is the proportions are all off, so they look weird.
Each train was given a new name and unique narration, so its own voice depicting the trains as if they were in the Cars film universe. Monorail Red was Manny Monorail. Monorail Blue was Mandy Monorail. And Monorail Orange was Mona Monorail. The fun thing was the spiels sounded somewhat inappropriate. Because they were like, I'm Mandy. Thanks for riding inside me. And things like that. Yeah. So, hope you enjoyed being inside me. All right, Manny. That's fine.
That's what she said.
Yep.
Literally.
Yeah. Oh, boy. So, yeah, that was the thing that happened. Back to Walt Disney World. Starting June 22nd, 2014, the monorail began operating on a different timetable in order to accommodate work on an automation system. The system would provide, if ever completed, a more efficient service with enhanced safety as well as more frequent dispatch of the trains, faster switching times, and monorail arrival information. Pilots would still be seated in the front cab, but would not be under control under normal operations. In early 2013, rumors circulated that Walt Disney World monorail system would be in for major changes, and since opening in 71, of course, pilots had operated these monorails. But Thales Transportation was working on a complete automation system of the entire 17.6 mile system in the next 2 years. Good job. Drivers.
So keep in mind that these monorails, the Mark IVs had a 20-year design life, and so did the Mark VIs. So the Mark VIs came online in 91. That means in 2011 they should have been replaced. So this is already 2 years after the Mark VIs reached their end of life, that they were trying to retrofit them with an automation system where they really should have just scrapped them and started over with a brand new monorail.
If it worked, drivers would essentially become attendants on board to monitor train systems. The Mark VI trains would be launched from the stations by an operator who would decide when it's time to close the doors and send them on their way. The budget for this upgrade was recorded to be around $75 million, which is $74 million more than Toy Story Land, I believe.
Oh, boy.
Interesting.
Wow.
That's like the price of a Disney After Hours ticket.
Bazinga.
Thank you. Interestingly, direction of travel may be reversed on all lines in part to improve safety. That was the thing that could happen. Circling the Seven Seas Lagoon, the exterior express loop would run clockwise through the Polynesian, Grand Floridian, and the Magic Kingdom. The Lagoon Resort beam would run counterclockwise from the TTC to the Contemporary Resort to the Magic Kingdom to the Grand Floridian and Polynesian. The Epcot loop would run counterclockwise from the Epcot station through the park to the TTC. And this would negate the chance of ever having to drive the train backwards through a switch, a situation which led to the 2009 accident. Cameras, this did come to fruition. The cameras were added to provide train attendants with live rear view imagery. Continuing all through 2014, installation of the Thales signaling system continued on the monorail. Complicating the process is the necessity to operate 7 days a week, carrying thousands of passengers between resorts, parks, and parking lots. The new CellTrak CBTC RUTO system is an upgrade of Walt Disney World's CellTrak ATP system, which went into operation in '89, along with the then new Bombardier Mark VI monorail trains. CellTrak is a digital signaling technology which controls the movement of rail vehicles. While the trains will be almost entirely automated, should the installation ever be complete, train attendants will remain on board to monitor systems. The Teal train was the first to be completely retrofitted with the Thales system and has been serving as the test train while the rest of the fleet would be converted. This is kind of still happening.
I mean, I think it's all been, like, all the equipment has been installed. They just can't get it to work.
Trying to get it to work.
Yeah.
Thales is a pioneer in transportation technologies, one of the world's top supplier of systems, solutions, equipment, and services for mobility on railways. And automation was reportedly being added to enhance system efficiency and improve safety. As of the summer of 2015, Teal and Coral are the only two that have been converted, and apparently Teal is working poorly. It's 4 years ago now, folks, or 3 years ago. As it was a prototype of the two. Since Coral was the second to be done, it's having better luck, and it's the one they're using now to actively test the whole system. Gold would be next, but we don't really know where they are in this whole process. It doesn't seem it went very well. We'll see what happens. Again, the only aspect that would be automated is the driving. So, yeah. This automation system that's still not happening. Unbelievable. Started in 2013. And still doesn't work 5 years later.
You know what? And it's the Pandora construction team that's on it.
Yeah, I'm sure. No, they finished that in less time.
And it's not even new technology necessarily, because automated rail systems have been around for a
Oh
while.
yeah, absolutely. Like the one in the Orlando airport, for that
Exactly.
matter.
So I have to wonder
Which
if
they now ruined, by the way. We won't get into that.
I mean, CellTrak was around when Disney World first opened in its original rail control version, and so it's not really new. Yeah, it's been computerized and radiofied and all that good stuff, and it doesn't need wires anymore. But one would think, having done it for 40, 50 years, they'd be able to do this relatively quickly. I wonder if it's having to interface with the older proprietary is the problem.
I think that's what a lot of it is.
Yeah, I think it's either just the trains are so old that getting them to be reliable with the system is a problem, or they let Disney IT work on this thing, and that's why it's taken so long.
Well, I don't know if there were not any formalized specifications for like interfaces of, this box talks to that box where you're talking about the various PEO systems and so forth.
And there wasn't.
And there wasn't. And it's kind of myth and legend, and trying to unravel all that is probably highly challenging. It's probably very difficult. Plus, I'm sure Thales, which is huge in, let's say, municipal style projects as well as the DoD type projects, I'm sure they're not really quick when it comes to that sort of thing.
I don't know how complicated the engineering or tech is behind this, but I just keep thinking like, okay, 1958, Walt sees the Wuppertal train, and 1959, it opens in Disneyland. So
in a much enhanced and upgraded version, no less.
Yeah, right.
So it doesn't really matter to me how complicated this is. It just seems like we're inept now.
Yeah.
Oh,
well,
I think
you're
it's clearly
the visionary. You're missing the guy who keeps prodding people to do new and different things.
You're also missing those people underneath who didn't understand how to not succeed.
Right.
There was a problem to be solved, and they figured it out.
Yep. It seems like there's when you hear stories from Imagineering that the creative and innovative people are hired as freelancers, and most of the ones that are full-timers are in management. And so you have an excellent management. Well, you have a management organization that doesn't know how to be creative, doesn't know how to be innovative.
Yeah. I think I don't think they have those kind of. I think the problem is Imagineering has changed so much in just the last 20 or so years to where they're not in this line of business anymore. They do themed entertainment. They don't really do anything.
They don't really do engineering.
No, they don't do engineering, and they don't work with transportation systems. They buy transportation systems. The Disney Skyliner is them buying a transportation system.
Yep.
The new Disneyland monorails, they just bought those from some Canadian company. They didn't have a tremendous amount of experience. We see how that worked out because Disney couldn't design it themselves. They kind of reverse engineered it and then sent whatever they found out to that company. It was like, hey, we need you to do this.
And it was a massive problem.
Yeah.
I think even the attractions is that way too. They buy something built to their specifications, but still kind of off the shelf. And that's because they just don't think about it or
not necessarily always, but like roller coasters, they definitely, but even back to Matterhorn, they were using other companies. But in most cases, any new proprietary ride technology, like they're doing, like Flight of Passage.
Right. But even things like Matterhorn, I mean, they went to Arrow and they said, hey, this is different, a tubular steel roller coaster. What could we do with that? And then came up with the whole let's have it go through a mountain.
And they worked very closely with Arrow in that instance, right? Like they partnered with Arrow. They didn't just write them a check and say, here, you do this.
Right. It was more of a partnership than a value-add reseller type arrangement.
Like I think, I mean, as far as I can figure, the last innovative ride system that they designed was Soarin'.
What, WDI?
Yeah.
Flight of Passage.
Oh, well, okay. So
they've gotten back into it. The new pirate boat system from Shanghai.
Yeah, okay.
That's they've gotten back into the swing of creating ride systems. And a lot of that's that arm of the company, I forget, Disney Research or whatever. that's developing all that stuff. These college facilities that are developing new technology, and then basically WDI can go in and be like, oh, we like this, this, and this. We want to take these things that you guys have created, and we're going to use them for something.
So it's still not WDI inventing it. It's
the
inventing
Disney company still, though. I mean, yeah. So let's talk about currently. Obviously, Jason, you did a wonderful piece a couple months ago, which was actually before the most recent issue, believe it or not. So maybe I'm going to jump to the most recent issue, the door incident, which, of course, early this year, January, a door in Monorail Red popped open with guests on board during a trip to Epcot. A guest filmed the incident, and it made national news. Reportedly, this had happened before this incident, and guests were given undisclosed guest recovery in return for signing an NDA at guest relations. But this time they forgot to do that. So this happened. So this made it to the internet. And Monorail Red was taken out of service for repairs. It is now just returned to service as of this week. We saw it at Epcot. That's a thing. But it's back. But this is... I mean, obviously, we're not stopping to talk about all the breakdowns and problems as of late. We have videos on YouTube of teal being towed, and just the towing is a regular occurrence. These things breaking down is a regular occurrence, and now we have these door issues. It has gotten to the breaking point now.
Well, they're 8 years beyond their design life at this point, and I think that is plus. Cheapening of maintenance is definitely
the parts don't exist anymore is the other problem.
Well, right.
Okay, so I've now been corrected by a Canadian. Bombardier is the name of the company. They no longer make any of these parts.
Okay, so here's my question, though, and this is what I mentioned in the article. Somebody somewhere just built 2 new cabs to turn into Monorail Peach. So somewhere there's enough parts, or they can put enough parts together to build Monorail Peach, but they don't have the parts to repair anything. That doesn't quite make sense to me. That they can build a brand new driver's car from scratch, but yet they don't have the parts they need to repair things. So something somewhere... Somebody's passing the blame or something like that, because I don't buy it.
Yeah. I don't know what's been happening, but this is I never thought in my life I'd see that. And then them having to slap these ugly stickers above every door to not lean on them. Like it's pretty bad.
Yeah,
it's not good.
It's getting to the point where,
I
mean, so what hasn't? So 2009 was the first monorail related fatality, and I think it's getting to the point where things. I hope things change, but I can see us coming to the first monorail related guest fatality.
I would be amazed if a new fleet has not been ordered or at least designed at this point. I think the door incident was, if it wasn't already in production, it sure as hell is now. This was national news. It makes them look terrible. Something's got to be happening.
But in that case, it seems like they would want to advertise that they are replacing them.
I'd like to introduce you to the Walt Disney Company. The company that still hasn't announced Pizza Planet, and it's less than 2 weeks away.
Yeah.
On the other hand, announcing new monorails might be seen as an admission that they need replacement, which is.
I think that's part of it. I think it makes too much sense that it's going to be lumped into the 50th. And they could then be like, as part of our 50th, we are taking this classic icon of the Disney parks and bringing it into the modern era. I can write the parks blog post for Jennifer if she wants. I can help her out. And then she won't write Daisy, Duck or anything like that.
And I mean, new cars, new trains are one thing, but one of the key findings of the NTSB report was that a major contributor to the accident, this is talking about the pink and the purple accident, was a lack of standard operating procedures leading to unsafe practices. And I wonder, those are extraordinarily difficult to correct because that's often a cultural thing. It's very expensive. It's training. You have to rethink things from the ground up. I wonder how far we'll see improvements in that part of the whole safety system equation.
Well, and I think so. I think a couple things. There hadn't been an accident for how many years, and so I think the lack of standard operating procedures clearly was maybe an issue, but I don't think it was the proximate cause.
No, because if that guy was in the office,
if the guy was in the office,
what it was a lack of proper training or requirements for managers or however you want to call it. I don't know. But at some point, somebody should have been there and they weren't, and that's not standard operating procedure. I mean, yeah, sure. Standard operating procedure would say there should always be a manager in the control booth. Fine. Okay. But still, managers didn't used to leave the control booth to go have dinner in the past. So it's a cultural thing that was even allowed to happen.
It's like the reports on NASA, lack of safety culture, lack of cultural awareness, etc. Yeah, I mean, all safety systems are layers, and often one of the primary layers are the humans running and using the system. And if that fails, and you don't have something to back it up, then the system will fail.
Things happen. So I think the new monorail system, if one is coming for the 50th, I think clearly is going to be much more automated. And what that basically does is it takes the standard operating procedures out of the hands of humans for the most part.
It's also likely going to be a pre-existing design.
Maybe.
I still think it's going to be a pre-existing design from a company that makes monorail.
That would be interesting, yeah.
Speaking of that,
as far as the chassis, or do you think the whole?
Well, let's talk about the Siemens. Let's talk about the Siemens thing because we know quite a bit about that, and I think that sets up the rest of this conversation pretty well. So it seemed obvious that Disney needed a new fleet. So Siemens, the company that sponsored Spaceship Earth and Illuminations at Epcot for the past decade, offered to provide Disney for free, quote unquote, a brand spanking new set of Siemens monorails as part of their negotiations to renew their sponsorship contract. These are a pre-existing design. They exist in other places. Siemens has done them before. However, the catch was that the monorails would have to be sponsored by Siemens and sport the corporate logo. Disney balked at this for several reasons. First, the monorail design that's been featured at Walt Disney World for over 45 years is iconic to many visitors and adorned various pieces of Disney merchandise, from pins to shirts to socks to plush to the world's largest mug. It's been everything. To suddenly possibly lose this merchandising ability, was a non-starter. I don't think Disney wanted to lose that. Additionally, guests have always viewed the monorails as futuristic, in part thanks to Bob Greer's brilliant design. To bring on a new fleet of monorails with a much more utilitarian design that is not unique to Disney would probably be an issue, although in today's climate, maybe not. Maybe we're overthinking it. Maybe us as fans and understanding quality control, we would think that, but who knows? And Siemens so Disney turned down the offer. Siemens was severely offended, and because of that, decided not to renew their expiring sponsorship at all, shutting down their corporate VIP lounge in Spaceship Earth in July. That is months ahead of the end of the contract. They decided they didn't even want to be there until October 10th. While there are a number of monorail manufacturers around the world, the set of 12 monorails is not an in-stock item, and the lead time for assembly ranges from months to years. This in addition to custom design that Disney would require. One might speculate that perhaps, again, the 50th anniversary seems like the right time, but who knows? And the list, in today's day and age, the funny thing is the list of possible manufacturers is real short. Bombardier is a contender, but seems unlikely given their recent negative press, ranging from payoffs to sales in Iran. This includes a recent history of late deliveries on high-profile transportation projects. And with Bombardier and Siemens seemingly out of the picture, Disney would likely have to look east, namely Hitachi, who has most recently produced a fleet in 2009. Hitachi was the manufacturer of the reliable and much-loved Tokyo Disney Resort system we talked about earlier. And there may be a few other options, but the choices are super limited. There aren't a whole lot of companies that can do this, is the real problem. And so who they're going to get and how it's going to happen is really a mystery at this point. I think at this point it has to be happening. The construction of the Skyliner system really indicates that they are in no way ever going to look to build a new monorail line. It's never going to happen. You're never going to see it. Unless magically 50 years from now, people suddenly believe in monorail technology and that's going to be the future, then maybe, but probably not in any of our lifetimes. So we have a gondola system. Oh boy, how innovative. Coming, to connect Hollywood Studios and Epcot and the Riviera and Coronado and Pop and Art. But then we have this larger problem of, well, when are new trains going to come to help the existing lines? And people talk about a rumor, Walt Disney World to get rid of the monorail. That was never even a discussion. I mean, likely some person had to bring it up in a meeting because that's their job. And then I think immediately they were like, well, no, because then these people paying all these money at these 3 very expensive resorts are losing one of the biggest pieces of why they pay all that money to stay at these resorts. So there are several arms of the company that won't allow operations to end the monorail. It's not going to happen because there's too much money at stake with the monorail. There's too much money that could be lost by it going away.
But there's also a heck of a lot of money that can be lost by, someone falling out the door.
That's absolutely true. And that's why you should just bite the bullet and buy some trains, because you're a company that continues to make more money every quarter, and you should just be okay with this. This one expense you have to make every 20 to 25 years. You should just.
So you think that basically they told Siemens no, and then they went to somebody else in order to.
I think they told Siemens no, and then they didn't even think about it, and then the door popped open, and Bob Chapek went, "Well, maybe we should do something."
Yeah, that seems likely. I mean,
and then he canceled the Main Street Theater. Do you want my theory? That's my theory.
There you go. I think the Siemens offer was interesting, and I get where both companies were coming from when, Siemens got offended that it was turned down, and I understand why Disney turned it down. I think they both had valid cases, and I think it was a match that wasn't going to work out. Siemens was asking for too much control. It's something that was too production line versus Disney that wants to have something that they own and something that is uniquely Disney. So it makes sense that deal didn't fall through. Now, as far as who they go to, I absolutely would love to see them go to a Japanese manufacturer, whether it's Hitachi or one of the other rail companies over there. I wouldn't even mind if they start talking to Tesla or one of the high-tech infrastructure companies here in this country and start looking at that. But if the 50th is in 2021 and they want something that's custom, they're already too late. That's going to be a 7 to 8 year process. So they either have to settle for something that is kind of off the shelf, if you will, or they have to be willing to live with the current system for another 8 years.
There's stuff about the Siemens issue, the Siemens discussion that really bothers me. It doesn't make any sense to me that Siemens offers to do something for free and Disney just says no. And there's no negotiation. Because, of course, Siemens is going to come out with, like, we're going to put our name on it, and we're going to have all this stuff. Why didn't Disney then just say, oh, okay, well, let's, negotiate some of these terms? Because they did that with Alveg in 1959. That's why it was the Disneyland Alveg monorail. And there might have been some ability to come to an agreement with Siemens, or maybe there wasn't. But I think saying no outright was what caused Siemens to completely walk away from the company altogether. And if at least they tried to negotiate, they might still be sponsoring Spaceship Earth, even if we didn't get our monorails.
Well, I think Disney said, hey, can we do this without your name all over the monorail? And I think Siemens said no. And I think that's where we arrived at the situation. Siemens is a German-run company, and I don't, from what my understanding of the company from people that may work there, is that their management doesn't take lightly to they were offended. They were very much offended and like walked out of a meeting. Like they offered a gift, and a company basically saying, we do not want your gift, was apparently very offensive to them and something that they could not get over in any way. I don't know if that's a cultural thing, but that was my understanding of it.
Not so much culturally, but it could be a company culture thing.
Yeah. They seem like a very proud company. So I could see that in that way, whether that's cultural or not. I think they're a very proud company. And for whatever reason, I don't know, maybe Bob Chapek maybe isn't the most eloquent person in a meeting. Right? I mean, who could he offend? So who knows? We don't know what happened in the meeting, but either way, Siemens was definitely offended to the point where they basically walked away from the entire deal with Disney, which beyond being a sponsor, Siemens technology is used in a ton of places. At resorts, most of the fire systems in buildings across property are Siemens pieces. The infrastructure for Radiator Springs Racers is Siemens. They're a very important part of a lot of the behind the scenes things at a lot of places at Disney parks.
And they have a huge connection with the state of Florida. Generally, there's a huge presence there.
Yeah, I mean they have an Orlando office even, so even right here they have a giant presence. So yeah, I think that's why the deal made sense. And so for them to walk away, they had to be really offended, because there's also, beyond the sponsorship, there's a lot of money at stake. You know, those things developed by Siemens cost a lot of money, especially like the Radiator Springs Racers stuff. Right. And, you know, Siemens walked away from a lot of money because they were offended. So that's definitely, it comes across as a pride thing.
Yeah, but it had to have been tremendously mishandled by Disney. And I know that Bob Chapek is like Mr. Personable, but like he's also a good businessman and had maintained that relationship for a while. So like, why didn't know how to handle
consumer products though? I don't feel like you have to work with a lot of other companies in consumer products. You probably are kind of sealed in the Disney bubble.
Possibly.
Well, you probably don't have to negotiate big deals. It's just other companies come to you and say, hey, we want to license your characters. And you're like, okay, give us this much money.
They should have a client manager in there with him. Like,
they probably did. But here's the problem: is like the Siemens executives are like up here. Bob Chapek's like over here. That's the problem. Like maybe Iger should have like actually just came in and like talked. Like maybe that,
probably.
You know, that's a big enough company and a pretty large sponsorship deal on the line.
They shouldn't have put Chapek in charge of it.
That might he's still, yet he's still the golden boy. Well, we don't know what's necessarily him. I assume we don't know the whole story, but
yeah, I just feel like there are pieces missing from the story.
Oh, I'm sure we don't know the whole story, but the question is,
I think we know enough.
We know enough. The question is, was there
who offended? What was the point of offense? But we definitely know what was offered and what Disney said no to and why. That's. I think our source on that's pretty good. So, anyway, and that's where we are today. And now we don't have new monorails, and we don't know if they're ordered. And Disney isn't saying anything. And there's a lot of rumors that they have, but nothing solid. And you know, obviously, once we get something solid, we're very happy to tell everybody. But we don't have anything solid, so. What's going to happen? This is the part in the segment where we talk about what do we think is going to happen. Do we think? I mean, it's really simplified in this segment. Do we think they've ordered a new fleet, or do we think they're going to continue to run these into the ground?
I think both. I think the new fleet isn't going to get here in time. And so my thought is that they're going to run these as much as they can until they start to break. You'll probably lose one or two. Basically, I mean, at this point, they're sort of cannibalizing them for parts as it is. So I wouldn't be surprised to see us back down to a fleet of 10 in 2 years or so. And then, if the new fleet gets here by the 50th, that would be great. Maybe it gets here during the 50th. I don't know. But it also seems like we talked about the conversion from the Marks 4 to the Mark 6s and having them both run simultaneously and the confusion.
It's going to happen at some point regardless.
Well, unless they bring brand new ones and, they put them on the track.
Simultaneously? I don't know.
There's
got to be some, you got to break them in a little bit. You can't just, the next day be like, all right, all 10 have changed.
Well, there certainly has to be some testing going on, but it's also possible to do that testing. I mean, if they use the express loop for testing and then they use the resort loop to run everything, or they use the Epcot loop, I don't know. At some point, I think they're going to have to switch over, and it's not going to be a convenient thing. But then again, the state of the monorail system right now isn't a convenient thing for most guests either, because it's closed half the day and stuff like that. So,
do you think? Sorry, do you think we could see another? Was it the Mark 5s that were new bodies on top of existing chassis that were rebuilt and remodified, or do you think we're beyond that?
I think we got to be beyond that. Those chassis, I don't think have a whole lot of life left in them.
Because that would shorten the timeline, but maybe not improve things sufficiently.
I think they're too old now. I think the letting them run another decade was too much, I think. I can't imagine.
I mean, I definitely think that if they haven't ordered a new fleet, they're about to. Now, I think they did have a serious conversation in meetings about whether it was worth it to continue the monorail or shut it down. Because even myself had to have that argument with myself in terms of, would it be worth it to just go to a completely bus-based system? And I think, I would hope that they would come to the conclusion, like we have, that no, you can't shut down the monorails. They are an integral part of just the infrastructure of the park, let alone the identity of the park.
Look at the PR nightmare that was charged parking at resorts. I want you to, I would imagine it would be that, which was bad, times 100. Because Joe Schmo, who's been to Disney World once in his life, will turn on the news and see Walt Disney World's going to get rid of the monorail, and even he's going to be pissed and call.
Yeah.
So I think my feeling is that they talked about it, they thought about it and decided not to. They're working on a deal. I think they actually don't put it in for the 50th. I think they announce it at the 50th, unfortunately. And I think they're going to run this one to the ground. I would like to see them do a hard cutover to the new system, because I don't want to perpetuate any of the 1971 technology into the new system.
Right, exactly. That was kind of my point, is that you have to let that 71 technology live if you're going to do a slow cutover. And I'd rather not have that happen.
Right. So you're either running parallel track management systems and signaling systems and train management systems so that you can operate both systems simultaneously and then rip the old one out when the last old train goes away. Or you have to shut it down for 6 months, quickly install it, test it, and then get it back up again.
And I think you can do that, because I think if you get new trains from a company like Hitachi, you're not going to have issues with the trains. You're going to have issues with, making them work on your system.
Right.
But so the issues with the trains that they've had in the past aren't going to be there. I think you could do it in less than 6 months. The problem is you have to get a fleet of at least probably 8 all at one shot in order to do that. And that's going to be the difficult part. I don't think shutting it down for 3 months and switching over is going to be difficult once you have 8 of them on site ready to go.
Right. I think one way or the other, we're going to have a multi-month shutdown of the monorail in the park, either because of an incident that occurs or as part of the transition.
Or as part of the Epcot hotel
the
construction.
Epcot hotel construction.
Right.
Right.
That may be a very convenient excuse for them to shut down the monorail system.
Yeah.
But it's all. I mean, it's a convenient excuse to shut it's not an excuse to shut down the Epcot line. It would be a convenient excuse to say we have to shut down the entire system.
Yeah. But there is not another answer here. Like, they have to keep the monorail. I assume everybody is in agreement on that.
Agree.
Yeah.
I mean, if they didn't get rid of the Disneyland monorail system, which is 20 years older and really unnecessary, they can't get rid of the Walt Disney World system, which is necessary from a transportation perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said earlier, I mean, the Walt Disney World is what Disneyland introduced the world to the monorail. The monorail, as people know it, is that the white with the color stripe and that sleek design. I don't know if it's ever going to be, and I don't know how you modernize that, because any design they pick, and we'll be completely honest here, any design they pick, I'm going to post that concept art, and everyone on Earth is going to hate it.
Yep.
It's not going to matter what it is.
I mean, you could post the current Tokyo monorail as the concept art, and people are going to hate it.
Pissed. Yeah,
absolutely.
And especially when they find out all 12 of them are like each one's a character, they're going to hate it.
Just real brief, I thought it was interesting when I was doing research for an article for the magazine a couple of years ago about the monorail, that monorail advocacy groups, appreciated that Disney brought attention to the technology. But by now they feel like it's actually harmed the concept of monorails a little bit, because people think of monorails as a theme park attraction.
Yeah, that happened actually. I think that happened actually probably right after Walt Disney World opened.
Right.
When they started to have that change of heart.
That's probably why Disney went into that whole WED, transportation thing, to maybe be taken a little more seriously.
Right. Yeah, so it was funny. Walt Disney's intention to demonstrate it may have actually ended up kind of doing the opposite a little bit with the concept. In terms of urban planning.
I mean, I think it's funny because there are clearly monorail systems out there that work well and are fairly popular. It's just not in this country. And I think part of the problem is that in this country, the infrastructure and the people that design and build new infrastructure, there's so much bureaucracy that they can't get projects like the monorail.
It's also cheaper to do trains, and even high-speed trains, and so that's kind of what took the place of the monorail, is high-speed trains. You didn't have to build a single beam. You built rails, which were easier and cheaper.
Right, but the problem, I think we're finally getting to the point in this country now where people are realizing that there's aesthetics that have to be considered, and putting a monorail in the air as opposed to having to have it ride on the ground and have grade crossings at streets and things like that. There's a benefit to that may not be readily apparent at the beginning.
Yeah, or you could just build the gondola system.
Or you could build gondolas.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's also, we didn't talk about this here. We talked about this a while back. The concept of the personal rapid transit system, where you effectively have.
They said that was going to launch like at the end of last year. Remember that?
Yeah. Where you effectively have some sort of monorail or other elevated system, but instead of it carrying 400 people, it carries 4 people, and you have your own individual car that goes on a system and takes you directly to your destination.
Walt Disney World said they'd have those personal cars for cast members by the end of last year. Surprised it didn't happen.
Yep. And they call it minivans now.
I don't think that's the thing they were talking about.
Oh, it's clearly not. But yeah, I mean, so personal rapid transit is another concept that works, and it's been demonstrated, on the university level and in some cities. But I think the problem with that is that there are logistical issues with the layout of Walt Disney World, where moving that many people in a short amount of time is a requirement that personal rapid transit systems don't really work well with.
Yeah.
Yeah, back in the late 90s, I was involved with a large government contractor that was trying to design a PRT system for a Midwest city. And we had a couple demonstrators, one at a university, one at a very large corporate campus. And the problem turned out to be it wasn't scalable. It wasn't scalable from a financial point of view, and it wasn't scalable from, like Jason just said, a logistical or right-of-way point of view, where you would have to move things around that already existed to such an extent that it just was not feasible. One of the advantages of the monorail is the right-of-way is out of the way. As somebody said, you don't have to do level grades, like Jason said. You don't have to do protections. You don't have to do nearly as many prevention of accidents when one right-of-way intersects another right-of-way, because the monorail right-of-way is vertically in 3 dimensions above the other ways. And so that's one of the main advantages of it. Now, you pay for that, certainly, but the PRTs that had level-based tracks were just not scalable, and some of the vertically oriented PRTs were, but then the financing got in the way.
Yeah, and I think the unique aspect of a Disney implementation of PRT is different than, a replacement of a, subway system or something like that. Whereas at Disney, you have, tens of thousands of people leaving a park at the same time. And
yeah,
that doesn't happen in most transit systems. Most transit systems don't have to deal with that. And so, to build a system that can handle that volume, a huge volume at a very specific time is difficult to do without being overly expensive, because it has to be built to handle that high of a volume. So that's kind of the issue with I think, and I think that's the issue with buses too. I mean, to be honest, the bus system at Walt Disney World is a mess. The number of bus stops at the Magic Kingdom is like an ungodly, obscene number. And you still have to wait half an hour or more to get on a bus to get back to your hotel. Whereas the wait for a monorail is much less. So, clearly if they were going to do away with the monorail and just go to all buses, I mean, you might as well bulldoze the whole front half of the Magic Kingdom and just build 25 more bus loops, because that's how unscalable that is too.
Yeah.
You need a system that can move 400 people at a shot, and buses can only do like 50 to 70.
Yeah, there's varying philosophies in the PRT world. If you design for your maximum capacity, then you have a huge capital investment,
right.
But then your operating costs are pretty much constant, because if you have 1,000 whatever you want to call them, movement modules on the right of way at any one time, then you always have 1,000 movement modules, and then you can advance it into, well, sometimes you go to half capacity, which cuts your operational cost, but then you have to store the others in some other place, which also adds to your operational cost, and whether they actually end up gaining you anything is questionable. But yeah, it's and the buses are constrained by the right of way more than anything else. They could add 100 more buses, but the roads and interface points, the stations, can't handle any more buses, so they're stuck.
Yeah, and I mean, especially at the Magic Kingdom, where you have a single 2-lane road to get from the Magic Kingdom to the entire rest of the resort. That is an enormous bottleneck for buses that monorails and boats can just completely, circumvent.
Or you build flyover ramps.
Or you build ugly flyover ramps and
Right.
ruin the view from the Contemporary. Yeah.
Which from an experience point of view isn't great, but there's almost no operational cost to a flyover ramp.
Right. Just capital. Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting to me is when you look at the bus Magic Kingdom bus station area, like from the top of the Contemporary, and you see how massive it is. When Disney first started looking into PRT systems, and looked at the size of the implementation that would be required to basically be able to handle park dump at the end of the night. The reason they balked at it was because the size of that station would have to be absolutely enormous.
Yeah.
But the size of the bus station now is really obscenely enormous. I think it's an enormous waste of real estate in front of the Magic Kingdom.
Right, and you could argue the same at Disney Springs too, where you have four bus corrals and bus stops up to number 70 something or something like that.
I mean, Disney Springs is at least, I think better from a design standpoint because the buses travel on dedicated rights of way. They're not sharing the road with cars there. So that was, I think, putting the dedicated bus lanes on Buena Vista Drive was an absolutely incredible improvement to traffic.
Well, that's what they're now trying to do in the Magic Kingdom area. So
yeah, so it's kind of like, well, you have to do something if you can do the monorail. And I mean, way back when everybody rode the monorail from the Magic Kingdom to the TTC, and then they got on a bus.
Yeah. Well, we do. We live in this age where it's clear that's where we're heading. We have seen so much road work, the Skyliner approval, and all the road work we've seen the last couple of years, and going on right now, leads me to believe that they have taken a serious look at how people get around Walt Disney World and how their public transportation system on property works. And new monorail trains not being a part of that doesn't seem a possibility. I think, like David said, they take a long time. And so even if they were ordered before the door incident, they're still a long way away, which is the big problem. But at the very least, I think, like you said, like what they did at Springs is now what's happening at the Hollywood Studios parking lot, and it's what's happening up at Magic Kingdom, because they're going to supposedly close off the backstage road, and they have the flyover to the resorts for guests that skips the toll plaza and all these kind of things. It's what's interesting
is, I mean, they built those flyovers so that resort guests don't have to go through the toll plaza. But then they implement resort parking fees that are going to mean resort guests don't want to drive their cars to the resorts anyway.
Yeah. But resort fees also exist everywhere else. So, I mean,
I just think that's, but I mean,
you also have parking lots that are already full. Never mind 2019 for 2021. So,
well, and that I think
you're staying at Disney Resort. I mean, I don't like the bus system as much as anyone else, but I mean, between Magical Express and all the buses, and now the Skyliner, which is going to handle the busiest resorts on property.
Yeah,
between Pop Art and Caribbean Beach. I mean, Disney is spending a tremendous amount of money to give you transportation at those resorts. You're kind of paying for it.
Yeah.
So I understand that line of thinking.
I mean, regardless of whether, the parking fees are going to, make people not want to drive their cars onto property or not, or whatever, I don't know. There's still going to be transportation issues. And I mean, even if the parking fees convince, I don't know, 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 people not to drive their cars, then that's 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 more people that are going to be riding the buses. So that's clearly...
Yeah, but clearly we're going to have less bus traffic once the Skyliner opens. I mean, that...
You'll have less bus
traffic. That does for the monorail resorts what... I mean, that those essentially become just like the monorail resorts, where you only need to run buses when...
Yeah, no, between Caribbean Beach and Pop, yeah, sure. But that's only between those two resorts.
Studios and Epcot.
Well, and there's not a bus between Studios and Epcot now anyway.
Yeah, there is.
But how often does that bus... That bus runs
terribly often, but it happens.
Right.
They have the friendship boats, but...
They have the boats, which they will continue to have.
But now I think they'll have a lot more...
The Skyliner, I think, solves a big part of the problem for Caribbean Beach and Pop and Studios. I think what it doesn't do, and maybe this is just like the proof of concept part of it, is that you need that sort of thing to be expanded to many more resorts in order to make it decent dent in the number of buses that are required.
Yeah. Well, whatever the case may be, we will eventually find out the fate of the monorail, I'm sure. But obviously, as Disney fans, we love the monorail. It's one of the defining things about so many of the Disney resorts. It is amazing that some of them don't have it. It's kind of sad, I think. Well, Hong Kong has that train with the Mickey handles and stuff, so at least they have something.
And Shanghai has a monorail now.
Where?
I don't know. I had a picture of it.
Shanghai.
Or maybe
Tokyo?
Was it Hong Kong then?
Hong Kong has a train.
In the train.
I don't know. I had a picture of something. I don't have it anymore.
It was
I'll
Hong
figure
Kong.
out what
was
it
the
was.
train. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's an important defining thing is connections to Walt. It serves an actual purpose at Walt Disney World, and at Disneyland, it's now going to connect to that new hotel, even though the station isn't moving. It's going to connect to that new resort hotel, so that the tradition is going to continue on. So I think it's safe to say Walt Disney World will always have a monorail system. I would find it hard to believe it won't. So with that, those of you listening to the podcast version, because we didn't even talk about the narration thanks to time, we're going to treat you to a montage of the various narrators of the Disneyland and Disney World monorail systems through the years. And those of you watching live, you'll have to download the podcast to get that. So too bad. But that's going to complete our journey. Scott's gone, so someone else has to do it. You can take it away, McFly.
Whoosh!
Do, 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 do.